Welcome to our one-day workshop on improving learning outcomes at the school level post-pandemic. So everything is happening post-pandemic lately. I just want to give a little background and kind of intro. And I know we have lots of people, so if we go around the people, it's going to take lots of time. So I'm going to save that time. And what I'm going to do is set up some ground rules and give you some background of the program, why we are gathered here today. So if I may, if you know how to rename your name in Zoom, can you put your name followed by the country so that people will know? I know most of you are from Philippines, so people will at least know that someone is from Nepal or Ghana or Romania or US. So I think that will be a good thing to do. That saves us time for introduction as well. Go around and then just to give you some more ground rules is that at some point, if you don't have a bandwidth issue when the formal presentation begins, it's good to have a camera on, so it make it a little more interactive. Otherwise, like talking to a wall. And raise hands if you have any questions or comments and during the presentation. And I have told all the coming presenters, if there's a question or someone raises their hands, they will keep eyes on that. And just to give you a background why we are here is back in March, April 21, we organized a week-long training program for education administrators. And I'm in Washington, DC. I'm from International Development Institute, for those who hasn't met, whom we didn't meet yet. And we organize lots of training and capacity building programs on various topics, including in the area of education. So this training program was in March, April, and attended by participants from Philippines, Nepal, Ghana, and Romania. And most of them were from Philippines. That group had a pretty large number of Filipino crowd, and they were supported by RTI International and the USAID. And all the participants completed a 5 days program, and we had a program evaluation. We did a session evaluation as well as overall program evaluation. And we shared the outcome of those evaluation with RTI International. And we met about those evaluations, since RTI had also done an evaluation. I think they met with all the participants from Philippines. And we found out that there's something what people learned from that group was just being together with each other. So peer-to-peer was a big factor. So peer-to-peer learning was one of the key factor of that whole workshop that was highlighted in most of the evaluation. So we decided to bring the same group back, plus few more from the same countries. And that's how we are gathered here today. So if you see some faces, they are from our March and April group, and there were 14 of them. And I know some of them could not join today. And I think 12 of them are going to be here today. Just 2 of them will be missed. And there are a few more colleagues that we have invited from these countries. And one of the main purpose of is peer-to-peer learning. So there were a couple of things we could have done. We wanted to hear from what you learned last time, and were you able to utilize any of them at your work? Because it's been several months, so we would really like to hear those in the conversation going forward for those 3 sessions. And we have talked to the facilitators, those who are coming, that hey, please focus on participants, and we're going to allow you to share your story during those presentations, and so we can learn from each other. So it's all about peer-to-peer learning for today. And and then we identified a few areas where we wanted to focus on today's sessions. And of course, they're all around COVID-19, its impact on education. And we're still trying to figure out what to do, what not to do. Every school districts in US, you talk about it, it's a very different story, and every country has a different story. So as we prepare as a nation or worldwide on education. So everyone's focus is on bringing more students back to the classrooms. Every policymaker has that in back of their mind. And, and pandemic is real, and it's really disrupting the education system. So we are all experimenting different things in different countries. So that's part of conversation will be there. So we learn from each other what someone else is trying in different countries, and then much of the conversation will focus on predicted learning losses and emotional toll experienced by the students. And sometimes we just talk about students, but those emotional toll experienced by teachers, and how about the community, how about the families. So I think that's a big factor when we talk about these losses. And is it realistic to expect ordinary outcomes in extraordinarily this disrupted year? I don't think so. But still people think that, we should have school returning to the normal that it was in 2019 or prior to 2020 March. And there are very compelling evidence of unexpected nature of pandemic. In US, we thought all the schools will open up by now, but now some of the schools are considering not to open, and there's a big debate going on across the US. And whether mask or not mask. So there are some unpleasant stories in US school district, and lately in that conversation with school districts. So unreliable data continues to flow. And so what kind of data are we looking at? Is the data forcing us to make a decision, or are we not looking at the data? Is it data which is forcing us to go virtual or go hybrid model or go full-time opening the schools? So we're going to focus on the first session on those data and design thinking, and think out of the box something and see if we can make those decisions, think about how it can help opening the schools. And it has also forced us to think a new health protocol in our lives. So we're going to talk in second session is going to focus on some of those health protocols and how those whole health protocols are being determined, and and where our policymakers, teachers, principals, we were never taught how to make how to deal with this challenging time. I don't think anyone, right? So we are just looking at, that's why the data becomes really important. Data-driven decisions becomes really, really important. And there is a fear of loss of learning, dropouts in marginalized population. But there are some good things happen with pandemic. The good thing is that there's a humongous increase in use of technology and tech devices. And there's challenges with IT infrastructures in many places. And how we're dealing with that. On the other side, we have seen lots of innovation in education right now. We are involved in one program where digital device was just beyond expectation. So we use radio, we use television to teach people. So there are lots of these examples. So we're going to talk about some of those in today's sessions. And I have shared bio of all our facilitators and speakers via email, so you have it. And we're not going to read them from here. And I just want to thank RTI International, especially Sarah. I don't think she's going to be here today, and Marisol for putting up with me and helping us hold this program here today. And let me start by welcoming Dr. LeBlanc. So Dr. Thomas LeBlanc shared his CV. So he is the Director of Education Office in USAID in Philippines. He's joining directly from Manila right now. And he has worked around the world, we name it, like Africa, Asia, around the world. And he has a doctorate in education for Harvard University. So Dr. LeBlanc, all yours. I will turn it over to you.
All right, thank you very much, Suman. All right, so let me give some opening remarks. Good morning and good evening, wherever you are in the world. It's a great honor for me to be here representing USAID, which you know is the lead US government agency for international development and humanitarian assistance. Throughout the years, USAID and the Philippine Department of Education have been working together toward a shared goal of improving access to quality learning. In particular, we fully support DepEd's current battle cry of Sulong Educalidad, which in English is Together We Move Forward for Quality Education. In so doing, and amidst the ongoing challenges brought about by the COVID-19 pandemic, we are currently implementing a broad portfolio of activities to support DepEd to mitigate learning loss during school closures by distributing technology hardware and digital learning resources, producing educational television episodes, conducting research on coping strategies during home-based learning, and responding to DepEd's capacity building needs. Given the ongoing nature of the COVID-19 pandemic and school closures, building capacity to respond to the changing needs of the education system during this period of crisis is needed more than ever. In collaboration with our partner RTI, the All Children Reading Project in the Philippines, and in coordination with DepEd through the Office of Undersecretary Dads San Antonio, who, as you know, is the Undersecretary for Curriculum and Instruction, we provided support to 8 DepEd staff to attend the Leadership Program for Education Authorities, or LPEA course on improving learning outcomes at the school level post-pandemic, which took place last April. The stated objectives of the LPEA course of the International Development Institute fully support USAID's goals. And these goals are to build leadership capacity, to better understand the new reality, revisit and reevaluate their existing plans, and develop new strategic directions, set newly calibrated vision and goals, and build capacity to collect and analyze data. This was an intensive training, and we congratulate you all for completing it, despite the many challenges of online distance learning and the time difference. We admire your dedication and commitment to completing the course and your desire to continue to learn and apply your learnings in your respective fields in education. To keep the momentum, your expressed needs for follow-up learning is the reason why we are gathered here this morning or this evening, depending on where you are. So this morning or this evening's follow-up learning is an opportunity for you to deepen your learning from the LPEA course and to know whether you have applied your learnings in your work on the ground. Allow me then to welcome you to this course, to the second LPEA course entitled Webinar on Improving Learning Outcomes at the School Level Post-Pandemic. I also want to welcome the participants from other countries, including Ghana, Romania, Nepal, and the US. I commend all of you for being here and for going the extra mile to become more responsive to education in crisis. The role of leaders in education is now being reshaped due to the challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic. Leaders are urged to be armed with data-based decision-making and design thinking in leading their schools. I hope that you will learn from each other's experiences on the best practices with leading schools during this pandemic. I would like to personally thank Undersecretary Dads San Antonio and DepEd's curriculum and instruction team for your continued support of this activity. And finally, I would like to thank our partners, RTI and the International Development Institute, for organizing this follow-up learning session. I wish you a very successful learning session. Thank you all, and mabuhay.
Thank you, Dr. Thomas. Thank you. So I know we have 7 o'clock for the next session, but this time we can, I know thank you. There's a round of applause for you. So I know this is something that we miss now, going virtual. Now we don't hear the claps anymore. So we just see the clap sign. And So with that, I'm just going to open up for a few minutes. We have 10 minutes before we get into the session. So follow up with the last comment of Dr. Thomas on database decision and design thinking. So if any of you who attended last workshop would like to say something, we have opportunities. So we're going to have these 5-10 minutes opportunities every session, some extra time we have built up. So we would like to hear if anybody wants to share what they have, what they took from the class from last time, and if there's any expectations, were they able to use anything at their work. So we'd love to hear those stories, and that's why we are here. And anyone from our last class would like to share? You can just raise hands. Yeah.
Can I?
Yes, sure, Roxana. So,
hello, how are you? I am a little bit late, but I hope I'm not the last one. Okay, so the course was excellent. I mean, the last course. And I can see that I can say that I use experiential learning and interactive communication with students online. I mean, during through Google, Google table. No, it's not table. Dashboard. That dashboard that the students can interact with you. I don't remember the name right now. This Jamboard. Okay, and students and pupils, because I also have some pupils, were very interested, more active than in the other classes. And I also had a very great opportunity that I've been accepted as editor to sustainability and to education sciences, that are Scopus and Voss journals on higher education. So they decided, of course, I have a lot of papers published in this field, in this area of research, but they decided to ask me, help them with some other articles. So I also, if you allow me, I also invite all of you to send papers to my special issues. I can give you the links if it's possible. I mean, if you allow me. Thank you once again. All the course was very important for me.
Thank you, Roxana. And she is from Romania, just to mention it here. Anyone else from the group would like to share the stories? I'm not going to take the name from my last class. Okay. Anyone else? Yeah, Ms. Roxana, can you share the link in the chat? I know that Marisol has expressed interest. I know she.
Yes, I will. Just a moment.
Yeah. So
thank you.
So we had number of sessions last time on leadership. Also, there was one session we spent on how to use community at such a challenging time, and we had 2 sessions on data driven decisions and design thinking. So anyone else from Philippines would like to share? I see many familiar names here, Donable and Joseph, many. Okay. So I know we're waiting for Dr. Padmanabhan. I told him we start at 7 o'clock, so I gave you some. I gave ourselves some cushion. So Marisol, do you want to share? Do you have anything to say at this point? Philip, Marisol, are you? Yeah.
Yeah, none yet at this point. I think Pankaj would like to say something. He's unmuted.
Or Director Mr. Raja from Philippines. Uh, from expectation perspective, how these things, how these capacity buildings are helping his department or Ministry of Education.
Yeah, we are actually we are gearing for the opening of school year 2021-2022. So we have set our school opening September 13. But of course, the decision of the president still we are in the pure distance learning. But we are preparing a guidelines for a pilot study of face-to-face in the country. But of course, with the current condition in the country where the Delta variant is surging, we are again back to the situation that we have last year. So, but we are very thankful to the assistance of USAID in providing us some capacity building and some insights on how we can um, open our school system amid this pandemic. This we would like we are currently finalizing our joint guidelines, so we would like to get more information about how do we make our guidelines more responsive to the current situation. Thank you.
It's a very good point. And today's second session will spend time on that. So we have invited school board member. That school was one of the very first one to start hybrid model back in December, actually. And so they are going full time, and they will be sharing their publication, which came out as guideline for opening a school, which many other school district has modeled after. And I think that will be very useful for this group because most of you are policymakers. So that's what that's a tool that he will be sharing, and and just I'll just like schools in US. If do we think it's a good example? I'm not sure, because there are lots of debates going on with Delta variant, or before even Delta variant, is whether to wear mask or not to wear mask. And some school districts they have given rights to family to decide if they want their children to be opted out from wearing mask. Then those kids can attend the school without wearing masks. So you could have percentage of students with mask and some percentage of school with students without mask in the same classroom. So there's lots of protest against the mask. I don't understand that too much, but so US school district is really struggling. Some of the school districts are really struggling with that kind of decisions. And so without further delay, I know we have Professor Padmanabhan here with us. So he's right on the dot. I've told him that we're going to start at 7 o'clock and come just a few minutes before that, and he is here. And I will just go quickly about Professor Seshaiyer. Many of you know him because he has done a number of training programs with us for school principals and teachers and policymakers over the years. And I have privilege to work with him for last several years, I'll say 4 or 5 years, and travel with him promoting STEM for teachers and schools and building capacity on STEM. And he has developed a number of courses on database decisioning and design thinking. He's a professor at George Mason University here in Virginia in US. And he just recently got appointed. I'm not sure if I have even congratulated him. He got recently appointed by the governor of Virginia in a STEM advisory board of the state of Virginia. And so next 1 hour, we will be with him learning, talking about what we learned in his last 2 classes with him. And also, I will just I'll just hand it over to him because Padhu, all yours. So you can introduce yourself and just let people know how you want them to call you, what you want them to call you. I think you go with the name Padhu. Yeah, all yours, Padhu.
Thank you all. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. So I'm actually going to see if I can rename myself. And yes, you can call me. I'm just going to put an uppercase so you can see my name on the screen as Padhu, Padhu. So it's definitely great to be connected. I see some familiar faces. Maria, you just switched on your camera. Hello. And I see a lot of you. I recognize a lot of you. I wasn't sure how many of you were gonna come back and how many are new here. So what I tried to do was to prepare something that was a recap from some of the things that we did, because it'll always be a good idea to always recap the techniques that we did, and then talk about why we are here today in terms of understanding how to make better decisions while leading schools. I know you're all school leaders, so, and coming from different perspectives and all that. So let's try to think about how we can work as a team to think about different aspects of making decisions when it comes to leading schools. So what I'm going to do, if so I do have access to, I'm guessing present. Yes. Okay, let me see. This is supposed to be a different screen. Let me try one more time. Okay. Can you tell me if you can see my screen?
Yes. Yeah.
Is it better now?
It's good.
Okay, good. Okay, good. So let me for starters do the following. I will put. I actually want to see if I can see your chat so I can actually comment. Yeah. So great. I can see the comment, but let me. Sometimes when I full screen it, I may not be able to see the comment. I'm going to put my Twitter and LinkedIn, so this way you can, if you want to follow or get in touch, you're welcome to. So let me go ahead and once again full screen it. And yeah, I can see your chat also. Good. I just wanted to make sure I can see your chat. Okay, welcome back again. And so it's a pleasure to be here and again meeting several of you. And as Suman was saying, my theme is education for all. So, and for all is something that I want to do later on today with you all. What it means to me, not just in terms of the subjects or the domains, but it's also beyond like who we teach, how we teach, and sometimes why we teach. That's very, very important. So as you can see, I do work with a range of students, all the way from undergraduate students on the top left, where I'm supposed to be the teacher, but I'm not the one actually teaching. And this is the biggest paradigm shift that most countries should learn is I'm going to say a phrase which is called teach less, learn more. What that means is the teacher should teach less so the students can learn more. And this is not my philosophy. This is a philosophy from the Ministry of Education from Singapore. And why is looking at countries like Singapore so important? Because it's probably one of the smallest nations and the top of the top in PISA testing. The moment they entered PISA, and if you all, I'm sure some of you know about PISA, which is the middle school, many of the middle school kids are given this idea of a conceptual understanding, just to evaluate their conceptual understanding in reading, math, and science. And Singapore did not enter the competition. Today, there are 90 countries participating. Singapore is much on the top all the time. And you must wonder why. Well, a very simple slogan, as I said, teach less, learn more. Think about that philosophy for a second. Wait a minute, you're asking the teachers to teach less? Yeah, that's exactly their philosophy. And So it's a very profound one, and you can go to the ministry and you can see how they adopt that philosophy and all that. The country below is another country I'll talk about, which is Singapore. You can see the teacher in the center and all these students across, and I'm actually there working with them in a particular school. And this is I'll tell you a story about this country in just a second. And then, of course, working with different range of students. I have had the pleasure to work with people from the military, teachers that you're seeing inside the classroom, excited with something that I'm showing it's an ICT tool. And then, of course, teachers outside the classroom with professional development, and students all levels. And my favorite program, which is called Focus, Females of Color and those underrepresented STEM, where we bring a lot of girls into campus every summer to engage them in science, technology, engineering, mathematics, because we need more women in STEM. So these are kind of the needs that we first work with, and then we build backwards, programs and all that stuff. So these are a few of the programs that I champion. So let's start with a simple technology activity. Last time when I was here, I introduced you to the notion of a Jamboard. So what I'm going to do is I am going to put the link to the Jamboard on the chat. Feel free to just jump with me on the Jamboard. Last time I asked each of you to introduce. I'm not going to do that today. I'm going to ask you to come with me to the Jamboard. I see lots of you joining, or some of you joining already. Fantastic. What I would like you to do is on the left side of the Jamboard, you're still seeing my screen. On the left side of the Jamboard, there are several tools. I want you to pick the fourth tool. The fourth tool will be a post-it. I want you to press on the post-it, and I want you to type what is your name? My name is Padu. I'll show you an example. What is my role? Well, I'm professor and director of several programs. Let me just say professor and director. And my affiliation is GMU. GMU is George Mason University. And one activity I picked up, and let's not be too geeky with education, I'm going to actually ask you something interesting. So, I started to run during COVID, and completed 3 half marathons, and I'm preparing for the next one, actually. Something that is non-educational, let's say. Okay, so when I ask this question, everybody's like, I created lesson plans. I don't want that. I want you to tell me something fun about you. So go ahead, and you can also pick colors like pink or orange or blue or whatever. Go ahead. Let's fill this up with who you are. What's your role? If you're an education director, write that, and then where you are. If your country is great, I'm going to say George Mason University, United States, or go ahead. Let's pick up okay, the George Mason University, USA, let's say, and then I'm just going to put it here. Go ahead, take a post-it from the left, fourth one, click on it, and start to place it on the screen, please. Just put your names so we know who you are. This way we know, because what I'm about to do has something to do with, so fourth post-it, fourth one is a post-it. So please click on the fourth tool. Yes, Marcel, Education Research Officer, RTI, started to lose weight. Yes, Marcel, that's great, fantastic. Okay, Roger, I am the planning director of education, Philippines. Fantastic. Phil from Philippines. Okay, so education, RTI. So I'm propagating different kinds of ornamental plant. Wow, wonderful. Called Wandering Juice. I need to look you up. So that's great, interesting. So RTI folks are here. Wow, 30 kilos. That's fantastic, Marcel. Actually, running did that to me also. That's fantastic. Daisy, I remember Daisy. So Chief Education Specialist, Department, Philippines Bureau of Learning, fantastic. Suman, Director at IDI, started reading movies. Yeah, that's like movies is like my favorite also. So that's great. Marie is head Indigenous People Education. Fantastic. I just gave a workshop to design thinking with tribal nations. Virginia actually has 7 tribal nations. Oh, Rosanna, welcome back. So Romania, so starting to learn yoga. Oh, good. Okay, good for you. So that's great. And Abby is a senior education program analyst, started bullet journaling. We would love to know what that is. I don't know what it is. So, or you're basically keeping track of things. And calligraphy, that's fantastic. Hard one. So I don't see people from Nepal typing. So you need to be typing also. So this is, remember, you are the students today. I'm the faculty. Okay. So, that's great. Donna Bell, welcome back. So Donna Bell is senior specialist teacher council education Philippines, watching Korean drama. I heard my daughters are into it, this Korean drama. I don't know what attracts, but apparently that's pretty cool, it seems. So Andrew, welcome back. Also supervising education background, Bureau of Learning, set up aquarium. Wow, that must be interesting. Take care of my fishes. That's actually really interesting because we were not successful with our fishes in the small little things that we buy for our, we bought. Okay, great. I really now know that you all do something besides education. Okay, so this is why I wanted to start off with that, because you know, it's the usual geeky, I do this, I do lesson plans, I do this. Well, everybody has a different side to us also. So, you know, what is interesting is I heard one of the biggest things that at least males started to do. Do you know what it is? You want to take a guess? Currently affiliate. Oh, okay. Actually, thank you, Jay. Thank you for Jayanti Subba. So I'm going to actually post it for you, because I'm glad somebody is putting it on the chat, so I can copy and paste it, so we can add Jayanti also to the list. Jayanti, you're added. Zarina, you're added. Let me see if anybody I missed on the chat. Okay, I did not. Okay, good. So this is fantastic. So there is a chef to a runner to a yoga practitioner to somebody who does planting, somebody who, let's see, painting. Okay, so there's a painter in the house. There is somebody who watches movies and books, and learning to like WFH. WFH, okay. So, and then carpentry. So look at, why the reason I did this is to just say relaxation with music, that we do other things also, right? But what is surprising here is none of you said cooking. Apparently males, this was one of the biggest things that if you asked a lot of people who are males, they'll say, oh, I became a cook because they started to learn a lot of things to do. They didn't know anything, you know, nothing else to do in house. So they started to learn to cook. And so what is happening here is two things. One, I'm trying to learn who you are. Two, I'm trying to understand what your interests are. Three, I'm doing a pre-assessment. I'm already doing finding out what you know, and then I will build on what you know and then do my class. So, you know, because I see these varieties, so this idea where you're using ICT to get kids excited about, like, you try something like this in your classroom, you try something like this with teachers in the professional development, I'll tell you how, you know, they will get excited and in sharing their, you know, the fact that you are asking them to actually do the work, you know, openly is a very important thing. And this culture is called active learning. Okay, so it's a very important way to actually engage students, teachers, you know, people from, I mean, any of the, I do this with leaders also. This is fantastic, and the board is already filled up. Fantastic. So now what I want you to do is go straight to the top here, click next, because one of the things I noticed, I went back to my notes last time, and there was a lot of, you know, discussions about, oh, Parash has already gone to the next page. Okay, okay, Parash, I'm going to actually erase this. So I'm going to take the erase button and erase you off here. Somebody's trying to write, which is okay. This is the child in you, which is writing, which is completely okay, just trying it out. So it does have a pen on the left, but what I want you to do is take Post-its now. You could do post. So here's the thing. Let me tell you something about this tool that I'm using. I'm erasing right now. That's the second one on the left, which is an eraser, because Parash got too excited here and started to write stuff. So, which is okay. This is what happens when you do a Zoom and you are doing it with kids, and kids will start to write all sorts of stuff. Okay, so you just need to be careful, of course. Thank you. Somebody's helping me erase. Okay, good. So the second one is an eraser. The first one is a pen. I like this last tool, seventh tool, which is a bar, this thing like hello, something like that, right? So you could even use like a text box, but I generally like the post-it the most actually. So my question to you is, you're all coming from different countries. There was something about ICT last time when I was discussing, I was looking at the videos, and like it seems like there is a lot of, and the other reason is we have been doing digital learning a lot. So can you go ahead and tell me some key points why, I mean, talking to the ministries, this has been one of the biggest challenges. Two challenges. One is ICT itself was a challenge. Two, teachers and ICT was a challenge. Can you actually go ahead and take some post-its and tell me the challenges? Go ahead and take 4 post-its and just put down a challenge. For example, I'm going to put like remote learning. That was a challenge. But then remote learning, we're talking about the teachers. So they had a challenge about remote teaching. So so you actually are so something like that. So go ahead and please put some challenges where whatever you comes to your mind, please. Whatever you think is happening. So go ahead. I'm going to ask you to start putting some challenges on the Jamboard. We are on the second sheet. Sorry, I want to make sure you all came to the second sheet. Let me see. You're not putting it here. So if you come to the top and go to the right, one right, you will go to the second sheet. I have other things for you. Don't go to the next one. I'm talking about the second sheet. There it is. Poor internet connectivity. So that's great. Digital divide. I love that. I'm assuming the director for indigenous groups is talking about it, because yes, it's a big problem. Digital divide, and again, broadband deployment to certain. You can't just go and dig towers and all that. Oh, this is a good one. Unfamiliarity with different tools. I'm going to put it here. I know you agree, but what do you agree with? Challenges you. Oh, you're agreeing with poor internet. Okay, good. Okay, good, perfect. Difficult to manipulate main board slots, HDD, etc., like we have in classrooms. Exactly. So that's about how to teach, right? Limited internet connectivity. Okay, developing self-learning materials from a standpoint of a learner. Fantastic. Engagement, student engagement. I can tell you, when we went online first, I can tell you some of the teachers thought, I'm not kidding, okay? They thought putting a computer like this, putting a board in the back and start teaching and like showing the back on the computer, and they thought it was online teaching. That's what they thought was online teaching, just writing on the board, because that's the only thing they knew how to do, writing on the board. And so, they maintain that thing. So it turns out many of you are doing two things. One is you're talking more about the I would say digital divide is a very important thing. I'm going to put it in the center. And internet connection, I'm actually moving it to one side because I want to box them, and I'll show you how I box them. So I'm moving all these because this is more like, you couldn't do as a, this is external, right? And then this is more like pedagogical. This is like, challenge for teachers to deliver the content ICT. Why? Because I've heard, like, for example, simple ICT lack of knowledge, for example, right? So, because many people think ICT means using a computer. Well, it's more than using a computer, right? And ICT, not just lack of knowledge, it's also how do you teach? I mean, how to teach ICT, right? ICT. And what I heard, the biggest challenge was, all those big terminology in ICT and things like that, right? So external partners, I'm going to keep that here. So this is great. Digital divide. So I think, so here is a tool I'm going to use again, just to teach you today. I'm teaching you ICT, by the way, right now. So you see there is a square here. I'm going to use this square. I'm going to put the square right there. And I'm going to also, I can order it and send it to backward. Oh, I'm sorry, send it to the back. So I'm going to do that. And you can see this. So now I'm actually telling you that I'm actually grouping them into categories, and I'm grouping them into categories like, for example, this is more about connectivity. All the things are out of your hand, out of an educator's hand. This is more like you got to work with the ministry of, different ministries to doing that, right? How to use technology in education, lack of ICT skills. So I'm going to put all this in one side, lack of ICT knowledge, remote learning, how to teach ICT, unfamiliarity with tools, difficult to manage things in the classroom. I'm going to put these two because I like these two bullets. I'm going to put this in the bottom. I'm going to actually, this remote teaching and learning. So the lack of skills, how to teach ICT, lack of ICT skills, how to use educational technology, connection. I'm going to put it inside this box here. And sometimes apps are just user friendly and considered non-digital, considered of non-digital native. So it seems like I'm going to put this as a separate category. So, and I'm going to say, I'm going to show you why I'm clustering. This is called clustering. And I'm trying to identify commonalities in these things. So I'm going to identify, for example, I'm noticing that some of you are pointing to, this, which is more like about, you can see how I'm immediately trying to identify a problem this is what I do with ministries when I advise them. I see that there is challenges in student-centered approaches. So, in student-centered approaches and engagement, for example. Engaging students is a clear problem that many of you are indicating. And then some of you are saying this, which is there's an assumption that ICT skills are taught when naturally acquired. Very nice. Okay, very nice. So this whole box is a big box. Maybe I should focus on that today. So, this big box here is like everything about skills, like, relevant skills. And this is the knowledge, the background that the teachers need to have, or, it'll be better to work with professional development. Those are probably the solutions. But before we go to the solution, we want to make sure what the challenge is. So here is a challenge, and I'm going to actually write down here. It's more like teacher content knowledge. Okay. So now we have identified what we are identifying together is we are actually building some things to understand what the deeper challenges are. So, and then I see this one, I'm going to actually box this because somebody is very particular about some very important things here. This is what I would actually call as don't leave students behind. And this is more like address education for all. Don't just teach for, and this is a big problem in many countries where there are lots of, for example, tribal nations or people in the interior where you have to go in a boat to teach and all that stuff. And it's very, very common, okay, in several countries. Very nice. This is interesting. I only got one here. Difficulty, I put it separate because this is the challenge, is we have a very tough time, I would say, coming up with integrated, I would say approach, right? So to solving problems, like you're saying external through emails. So difficulty coordinating with external partners. So the external partners could be your own, like there is a Ministry of Education curriculum development person and a Ministry of Education professional development person and a Ministry of Education assessment person. Sometimes they don't talk to each other. I've seen this in ministries all the time. They each want to own something, but then what happens is the teacher gets affected in between, and then the students, right? So because you're not communicating properly, okay, that's very common, okay, because the assessment person wants to inspect on certain things, but what they're inspecting is a curriculum that the curriculum development is completely, looking at something else. So I think this piece here of, I'm just going to call this piece as integration. And really working together. And so what I just did with you in about 5 minutes, less than 5 minutes, I was able to find out the challenges in this group. So you can easily do this with putting your team on the table and actually identifying all those challenges. Is that clear to everyone? Is this simple thing where I use what is called as a simple clustering approach? Of course, the biggest box seems to be lack of ICT skills. So let's go back and about lack of knowledge, lack of terminology, how to teach it, and things like that. And later on, I will show you a small lesson that I will actually teach you and on ICT. Okay. So given the time, I want to go back to the presentation, and let me go back to the presentation. Let me actually Okay, in interest of time, I'm just going to see if I can share a quick video. Let me see if I can share that. Give me 1 second. Okay, so I'm going to share a video of my center, and so you can actually see what actually happens in a typical classroom in the United States. Okay, so I mean, how we actually engage students in. Let me actually open the file. So give me 1 second. Share. Okay, share my screen. Okay. Okay, so I'm sorry here. So let me. The mission of the Complete Center is to promote. I want to make sure. Are you able to hear and listen for a second?
You got to close that window at the top. We can't see the video. I can hear it though.
Okay, then let me do one more thing. I'm going to move the video to my other screen, and then I think we should be good. Let me give me 1 second, and I'm going to stop share, and then I'll share one more time, and I think we should be good. Do you see my screen with the video now?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to share it again. How about now? The mission of the Complete Center is to promote excellence in mathematics teaching, learning, and collaborative mentoring through professional development. And we work with teachers in about 10 districts in Northern Virginia.
We really try to infuse and immerse our teachers in new practices, best practices that become common practices for them. And so we take the teachers in the summer and have them delve into the math.
The benefit for the teachers is at multiple levels. First, because we are bringing collaborative mentoring and a network through this program, the teachers work in groups and they are able to vertically articulate the topic that they are working with.
We call that process a lesson study. The host teacher gets an opportunity to teach the lesson. The other teachers get an opportunity to observe the lesson that they've collaboratively planned. They really want to focus on how to deepen their students' understanding about mathematics and engage them in actively doing mathematics.
We started small with about 44 teachers, and we were able to identify the stars from that program who actually are helping us now to work with many more teachers in the county.
They serve as knowledgeable others at the lesson study in really supporting the teachers' learning throughout the academic school year. They also allow teachers to think a little more critically about their practice. They're a critical friend in the sense that they're there to support them and not to evaluate them.
Students have multiple learning styles. They may be kinesthetic, they're more auditory, or they are more visual. They can actually look at pictures. So one of the things that we have tried to do in this program is to actually be able to get across the message that to master a subject, you don't have to do 1,000 problems, but you can do a problem multiple different ways.
Teachers are really thinking through a very, very rich task that deeply engage them in the rich mathematics, not just procedural knowledge, but really kind of delving into a task that requires them to think deeply and critically about the mathematics. Teachers is one of our main goals, but we also feel that parents are huge advocates for student learning, and if we can get our families into the professional learning of mathematics, we can really instill the love of math in students.
The Complete Center is a unique example at George Mason, where two colleges, College of Science and College of Education and Human Development, have come together, and the faculty are working together towards a common goal, but at the same time putting ideas together and working on something that's going to impact the whole state. So before I close the video, I want to say that as I say there, we started small with 44 teachers. Today I serve over 1,000 teachers, and with close to 20 districts, school districts and all that. So what is some interesting things about this thing is for example, the teachers. So what is happening here is the somebody from the main, like you guys, education, agency comes regularly, works with me and the teachers. You can see the teachers on the other side. They're actually collaboratively planning a lesson. Of course, they've gone through a workshop, professional development workshop with us. And what you're seeing here is the opportunity for students who can learn on, say, for example, using hands-on approaches like kinesthetic approaches and all that stuff. So the subject is not taught just subjects. In this case, I took an example of mathematics. We do science, other areas also. But I just want to tell you some of the things that's happening here. You can see this particular district leader showing up to a school, and the child is trying to explain, and you can see how she is like surprised at how he's explaining. There is this moment in this video where she's like, oh my God, how is this kid able to explain this complex concept? And then here I am planning with the teachers. The teachers are actually creating, this is called a lesson study. So they come together and create a lesson, and then they actually, as one of the things that was said is, it's not about evaluation of the teachers. It's not evaluating the teachers, it's evaluating their lesson plan, the integrated lesson plan. Is the science teacher able to talk about the math teacher able to talk about the geography teacher able to talk about the history? And that's how we create lesson plans. And I don't have time today to show you integrated lesson plans that I've worked with teachers. And so there are several techniques we use, and these are all, so they are explaining how each one of them is going to do. This is the teacher that is saying these kids will be sitting here and things like that. And then, believe it or not, if you actually notice how she was teaching, it's probably even hard to guess what she's teaching. She's actually teaching mean median mode. I mean, nobody I have asked would even guess what she's teaching. And she's not talking too much, teaching less, and students are learning more. And then the whole idea of students collaboration, right? So that's another big piece. And you can see every table has what you see in front of this kid here. You'll be amazed. These are elementary and middle school kids actually doing high school problems, but they're able to do this because of the way they are exposed to this material and all that stuff. So so that's just an example of, and I'm going to stop share and I will go back to the presentation. So it's what I'm going to do next is take 10 minutes to review the concepts that we did last time. And Suman, can you tell me if you're seeing my screen again? Just want to make sure.
Yes.
Okay. So I want to review some of the things that we did last time. Is one of the, so very quickly I'll do, I know there are more people here, but I don't want to do something, to put these things together. So there's a technique that we talked about, which was about asking, going deeper and asking why 5 times. So if there is a challenge, if there is an important challenge, like the curriculum that we have in the country is not working. Why? Because okay, I will play this with Suman. Go ahead. The curriculum in this, let me start with something else. The scores this year of the students in mathematics is very low.
Because they couldn't come to school.
Because they couldn't come to school. Okay. So why couldn't they come to school? Of course, you're going to say COVID, right? So, but then let's go on the teaching angle, right? So, and why did the students learn?
I'll go, okay, very first one. Let's go to the first one. I'll go to teaching angle. Okay.
Okay, teaching angle. Okay. So the scores this year are not good. Why?
Because they have to learn online.
They have to learn online. So, so why did they score bad, poorly learning online?
Because they couldn't interact with their friends.
They couldn't engage. So why is it that they could not engage?
Because they couldn't go to school and they couldn't figure out how else to get in touch with their friends.
In other words, they were not given the opportunity to engage. Why is that? Or why is that?
Because of COVID.
Because of COVID, yes. And also because, remember, somebody is teaching, right? So the person who is teaching may not be reaching them in a proper way. So the 5 whys could be 4 whys, 3 whys, whatever it is. There's a challenge, and then you ask why. You come to a root cause, basically. And it's a very powerful thing. You can use it inside your leadership. We did last time for this one. Why are students moving away from STEM, science, technology, engineering, mathematics? Why are there not many opportunities for girls? Why are there errors in educational reason? In fact, we talked about this, like textbooks printing things that are in, and there's lots of interesting discussions we talked about, and we talked about root cause. The next thing that you all did, this is something you all did. I asked about vaccines, and I taught you a technique called KWL. You see the K in red, W in red, and L in red. KWL is a very powerful approach which is used in classrooms to understand what the children know, understand what the children want to know, and then you give the lesson and then find out what they learned. So it's a pre-assessment followed by a post-assessment. But then you could be teaching any topic to children, fractions or about dolphins or whatever it is. So you can ask, what do they know? And what happens is most of the times children will say something that is sometimes it may be wrong, like, dolphins are fish, they lay eggs, but then that's what they know. And then you teach the science lesson because now you know what they know. And then you teach it in a much more interesting way. And then they'll say, oh, dolphins are mammals and dolphins are this and dolphins are that. So this whole idea of what do you know, what do you want to know, and what did you learn? I do it with the ministry a lot. What do we know about ICT in the country? Well, there's not resources, not, lacking training, blah, blah, blah. You can write all those things. What do we want to know? Well, how do we get funding for training? How do we do this? How do we do that? And then you implement a program like professional development, and then you see what did you learn. And that's an assessment level for the ministry, for example, right? So another technique, KWL. I was very surprised how much we learned in the 2 sessions. I went back and saw, and this is all the work that you did. I actually asked you, what do you know about vaccines? And this is all stuff that many of you typed actually. And then we talked about the iceberg approach, where you don't look at the tip of the iceberg, which is like outside the ocean, which is what happens when you know that some district is failing, some school district is failing, you immediately point, if you are like the big boss, you are like the minister of education or education director, I can tell you, if you find, let's say, the east of Philippines, some districts are failing, if you are the main person and you just say, oh, let's just send some teachers from the west, south, where they are doing really well, to the east, that's a pretty bad solution, because you just looked at the top of the ocean. You did not go down and see what is called as patterns of behavior. These schools have been failing for a long time. You did not observe that. And below that patterns is the structure in the system. It could be as simple as there is no computers in the room in the school system. There is no electricity in the school system. There's no chairs in the school system. So, and then the fourth thing is mental models. Like people think like, oh, people in the east of Philippines, I'm just using Philippines as an example here, they are lazy. This type of mental models. The children don't really read. Those types of things, right? That's the most important thing that you need to. So as education directors, unfortunately, we sit at the top and we think we can make a decision on let's just move these teachers there and that teachers there, and then this thing, let's give one professional development, let's change the curriculum. That's not going to cut it. Trust me on this. I've worked with enough ministries to tell you that that will not work. Okay, even though you have your degrees and you're sitting in big positions, that's not going to work at all. What will work is to really understand what was happening in the last few months or years. What will work is understanding what is the structure in that school system. Does it have boards? Does it have chairs? Does it have, how is the environment? How is everything else? You need to really understand that. And then the mental model. So this is a very powerful systems thinking approach called iceberg. We talked about this also. Then we did a SWOT analysis. So if you were to introduce a new curriculum, introduce a new training program, you want to understand the strengths, the weaknesses that it has. So it's like building a restaurant. You want to build a restaurant. You want to say your strengths are like, maybe you have a great, very tasty food. You have like, the latest and greatest and all this. So the weakness could be parking. Just because parking, people will not come there. Or maybe you need staff that is not available during COVID. But that's an opportunity. Because now you can say, I can do like Uber, deliver food. Now, Uber was driving cars. Now they are delivering food with cars. In India, it's the biggest business called Swiggy. It's just everybody, looks at Swiggy as delivering food. But then there are threats. Of course, there are neighboring restaurants. You don't want to exactly do the same exact thing and then compete against somebody who's really, really powerful. You don't want to go build a restaurant next to McDonald's and say, I'm going to sell burgers. You'll be a total failure. There's no question, unless your burgers has something more interesting, right? So that's very, very important. So when you're introducing something new, this is for any division you are, do a SWOT analysis, okay? Strengths, weaknesses, and you all did that also. We also talked about United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Most countries are interested in really understanding where it comes and where it fits and all that. And I shared an article that we wrote about how COVID-19, connects to all the other goals and things like that. We talked about pedagogical frameworks. One is giving a picture and starting with notice and wonder. It's an activity where children are looking at it and thinking about everything that you want to learn. And then you understand that finally, you as a teacher, you bring out like, oh, these are monarch butterflies. They fly between Mexico and Canada, and they stop in these places. Now you're connecting geography. They have, this many, there's also migration. So you talk about how many, butterflies. Now you're talking math. And so then you can bring the butterfly life cycle. Now you're talking science. And so how you actually integrate this into the classroom with the real thing that is happening is very important. Okay, so and then we talked about integrated teaching and learning, and I explained a 5E approach. How do you engage students? How do you actually have them explore with things? How do you explain? How do you elaborate? And how do you evaluate? I have my teachers have a 5E plan in every one of their lesson plans. I ask inspectors and education directors to, when they evaluate lesson plans, don't just see how they are teaching, their style and all that. See how they're engaging the students. See how they are making the students explore. See how they are making the students explain. See how they are evaluating and elaborating. So it's very, very important to really get this, this type of approaches into the lesson plans, into the curriculum. Is the textbooks doing that? If it's not doing that, it's a boring textbook. Just throw it away. Okay, there's no sense teaching using those textbooks, old dated and all that stuff. Even though you may have written it, but you have to reconsider training yourself again. So the next thing is summative. Most countries do this end of the year exam, and most people fail because they have to remember everything from the beginning. It's a very poor idea. If you're education directors and you don't do formative assessment, I seriously ask you to start here. Every day is an assessment. So the child is doing something every day. That means they're getting 0.5% of the credit, and that 0.5% of the credit gets added. So when the time they come to the middle of the semester, they've already completed like maybe 20% of the class. And then when they come to the end of the semester, they've already done like 50% of the class. So the final is only 50% really accounts for the grade. So failure rates will be low, and they're also learning continuously. So the reason I have the example of a soup is you go to a restaurant and you sit down and order soup. You know what the chef does inside? The chef is making the soup for you, and they don't just come and give the soup. They first taste the soup, and then they see, oh, there is salt missing. And then they put some salt, and then the chef tastes the soup again. Then they say, oh, there's spice missing. Then they put some spices. And what they are doing inside for you is formative assessment. And when they come and present the soup to you, and you drink the soup and you're so happy, the soup is so tasty, that's summative assessment. Okay, so essentially think about the soup analogy when you're actually doing formative versus summative. It's very, very important to think about it. Now, we also talked about a very powerful technique called Fermi approach, where it's about computational thinking and letting students think about big data, but in a very simple problem, breaking it down. So, how many air conditioned repairmen in Manila? Why don't we ask such questions like this in the exam? Well, they have to start with the population of Manila and then find out how many families are there in Manila. Maybe make an assumption. Maybe there are, 4 people, mom, dad, and 2 children. And so all it takes is a division. And then maybe, so we talked about this. In the interest of time, I'm trying to go to also cover more things, but you can go and watch my videos, and I'm explaining all these things in the earlier videos. Then we talked about data-driven decision making. How do I go into a shop and buy a car? Well, the cars available are, you narrow down your choices because you do have a big family. So then you think about your attributes and give them some weights, like which one is more important? Well, cost is more important than ease of maintenance or fuel consumption or number of passengers. I have a big family. and then you start giving points, and then you come up with a score, and based on the score you go and buy a car. And this can be done in education. You can think about, I want to introduce books, or I want to introduce a certain technology. Well, why do you want to do it? Ease of this thing, remote learning, and all these different things. You can actually put those things and actually build what is called as a decision matrix. We talked about a decision matrix. Again, I'm going over it, the hopes that you will be able to see my videos on YouTube from many of you. And since you've seen it, I don't want to waste time also going over it again. And then this is how I interact with ministries. This is the Minister of Education in Suriname. She wanted to come up with a curriculum, mathematics curriculum, but unfortunately the health minister said, no, if you are not teaching kids safety. So then I had to help the ministry to work on a new program called the Math Bridge program, where we took three things that the Minister of Health wanted: safety in terms of face masks, social distancing, and hand washing, and we brought it into mathematics. How many times a kid has to wash their hands, or how many, how far is the next friend sitting? So everything is a math problem. So they are always thinking about safety. So we came up with the first ever curriculum for mathematics of safety in the whole country, and we already published this work. And then another program is about integration, bringing science. So we know STEM, we know STEAM with the A. I created a program called STREAM: science, technology, reading, engineering, arts, mathematics, for improving the next generation, basically. So, and this is now implemented in 7 countries. The ministries are already integrating it: Jamaica, Antigua, Barbuda, all the Latin American countries. They're all actually integrating the ministries. If you want to learn more about it, I do have a paper published on STREAM across the Americas. I will share that later on with you all. If you want to read how I implemented this in all these ministries, and how the teachers, what do I do with the teachers and all that, you can actually see that. It does take a lot of work because, first I had to break the country into different districts. Each district I had to find people. I had to train those teachers in different places. I was the project director. I had some people from the ministry. I had local coordinators. That's how I built capacity. You can see the local coordinators that are standing with me, even working with me. Now the country has taken over, as in the local coordinators are building their own capacity. And that's exactly what I do. When I go to countries, I work with, I hate to call training the trainers. Teachers are not, you don't train teachers, you train dogs. You don't train teachers. It's a very, when people say, I'm a teacher trainer, okay, that's fine. I don't care. You train dogs, okay, to do things. You don't do that to teachers. That's very important to understand. Okay. So you help them enhance their pedagogical practices. That's what you should be doing. Not just go and say, I'm a trainer, and wear that, a hat like you are so good or something like that. So don't do that. Okay. That's very bad to do. Okay. So again, what you're seeing here is how, this is the former minister, and this is a kit that is in every single school. And the beauty was I did it right before COVID. The kit has a lot of ICT things, and the beauty was the students were able to actually use these kits, and they did it through TV and radio, by the way. I'm seeing my time about 15 minutes. I want to take advantage of, I know that many countries here, and I'm sure you can see your name in this list. I see Philippines here, 76th. Then I see, I saw Romania somewhere, yeah, right here, 49th. And I know that there are other countries here. This, of course, was the most recent average of the reading, math, and science in middle schools in your own countries. You start to wonder, why is Philippines or why is Romania, why are you all in the red, for example, right? So the red is where there's several reasons. I'm not saying like the United States, look at where the United States is. It's 25th in reading, math, and science. It's not like on the top of the top of the top. But you can see something interesting like Singapore, Macau, Hong Kong, Estonia. Estonia used to be 17, and now they are number 5. So you must start to wonder, what are these countries doing that we are not? And it's very, very important to learn from what they're doing. This is the average. And as I said, you're all sitting here as education directors. First thing you want to do is what happened here? You start to wonder. And I want to actually see one of the countries, which is Peru. I don't see Peru here. I want to see Peru. There's a story about Peru. I can't really see it. But anyway, so right there, Peru. used to be way back, and they did one change in the policy, and look at where they are, 65. So it's a very important thing to see what one small thing in the policy will change your rankings. Of course, I don't like rankings, but it's about how children should be learning conceptually. And then everybody is concerned about sustainable development goals. And the question is, they don't know how to integrate these things. So this is my new project with ministries, is how to integrate sustainable development goals into education. Okay, so this is what I teach, and how why do kids do really not so well in things like the OECD PISA? Because questions like this: which dog grew more? I can tell you, half of the crowd here will think like, wait a minute, it has to be the dog on the left because it looks bigger. I can tell you, children are thinking like that. The other kids are thinking, wait, 5 kilograms to 8 kilograms, that's only 3 kilograms. 3 kilograms to 6 kilograms, that's also 3 kilograms. So both dogs grew the same. So you can see 2 multiple choices in the test, which many kids are already failing. The real answer is the third one, where a dog that is 3 kilos is doubling its weight to 6 kilos, doubling. And this idea is doubling is important because children learn addition first and then multiplication. Multiplication is repeated addition. So, but so one is more like what is called as absolute thinking, and the other one is relative thinking. So it grows, but unfortunately in middle school, multiplication is more important. If a dog doubles in weight, then that's obviously grow more. So these are the types of simple questions that children fail on, right? So because we are not teaching that type of a concept very well. So for example, another one is, if I ask how many seconds are in a year, everybody is like, oh, it's easy, 365 days in a year, 24 hours in a day, 60 minutes in an hour, 60 seconds in a minute. It's just 365 times 24. And then you make the children go multiply, show off their multiplication. Yeah, it's a big number. I don't care. Because it's multiple choice. And if a child can actually sit there and guess. So for example, thinking like, wait a minute, 365 days is about 400. 24 hours is about 25. Why did I think of these numbers? Because these are landmark easy numbers to remember. 60 minutes and 60 seconds is like 3,600 seconds. That's about 4,000. Look at the numbers that I came up with. A child in less than elementary can easily multiply that, because 4 quarters make $1. So this multiplication can be done in their head. So children are not able to do these types of interesting things and all that stuff. So what I'm going to do is I want to respect. I had lots more. I can always come back again. And I had a class to teach you on ICT, but I'm not going to do it today. But I do want to probably show you how I engage students with these types of things. And I ask teachers to engage. I ask them to take real problems meaning real problems, where I ask them to engage. This is the amount of food that is being wasted in cafeteria. About 1.13 pounds per week by elementary kids, primary school kids. 0.73 pounds wasted by middle school students. 0.35 pounds wasted by high school kids. So I ask the teachers to use the United Nations goal, hunger, zero hunger, 1 or 2, goal number 2, bring that into the classroom, and as early as whichever grades, and have the children come up with solutions. And when they do that, the lesson plans need to be integrated into the science, the food, it could be geography, it could be where they are sharing. So they bring these types of 5E. So that's an example of how we bring these things together and all that. And asking them to calculate like how many students are in their class, how many classes are in their school, how many schools are in their district, how many districts are in their state, how many states are in the country. Before they know, a milk carton is going to be spent. And so it is, so now I'm helping teachers in many countries, actually education ministries, to integrate sustainable development goal ideas into the classroom textbooks actually. And there's a challenge there. People don't know how to do it. Human rights. How do you bring human rights into the classroom? Right. So there's a lot of cool ways to doing it. And it turns out you can empower the kids really, really well if you do these things. And I had a lesson for you with ICT, which I'm not going to do, which I'll share later on. But I just want to tell you about, because Suman mentioned in the title, design thinking. I just want to tell you what design thinking is, and I'll finish. It's what is called as a human-centered approach to problem solving. And you can come up with, before you come up with, here is an example of what is called as a prototype with a marker and all that, before somebody is coming up with a device for a sinus surgery. and I mean, and the main here is like, for example, a big problem that was solved where patients were not happy with the insurance company, and then they realized it was because the nurses were not remembering their names and who they were and things like that, because there were so many patients there. So they came up with a system to use a camera and use that to transfer knowledge from one nurse to the other nurse and things like that. So it was a very so there are 5 steps there. First, you need to empathize. So 5 whys that we learned. You ask questions, and then you define problem statements, like, what is the challenge and things like that. Is it ICT? And here is different techniques that you can use, decision matrix that you can use. And then you ideate different types of solutions, like, should I change the curriculum? Should I change the textbook? Should I actually do more continuous professional development? Or should I do better inspection and things like that? And then you actually create a prototype. It could be a lesson plan. It could be a website where all the lessons are uploaded. It could be like, sharing ideas, practices, and things like that. And test doesn't mean give a test. Test means test your product. That's basically what it is. So the simple philosophy is what is called as design thinking. And, so developing a deep challenge. So this could be where your sustainable development goals can come in. How does that come into the textbooks? How do you define problem statements? How do you ideate solutions from that? Different types of solutions, being creative and bringing creativity, communication, critical thinking, collaboration into the classroom, prototyping, and then testing it. And it's a non-linear process. You may go from empathy to define and ideate, and suddenly decide like, oh, I need to come back to empathy again. So it's a very common. My last message is working in teams. There was a message on we need to work teams better. What is the challenge here is when you put a curriculum developer, a professional developer, professional development director, an education director, all of them together, sometimes, and I've seen this happen, this happens. Everybody is touching a different part of the elephant and saying, oh, this is a knife. Oh, this is a carpet. Oh, this is a tree. Oh, this is a wall. Oh, this is a rope. I can tell you this is happening everywhere. Okay. And this is impacting. And what ends up happening, you create this instead of an actual elephant. Okay. So with that elephant thought, I want to make sure you understand what is systems thinking, another subject that I teach. And so this slide, I had it in the last one, is like, we are trying to move away from teacher directed to learner centered. We are not just focusing on basic skills but applied transferable skills. We don't want to create curriculum that is one size fits all, but is personalized learning. We don't want, we obviously are already transferring from text-based to web-based, formative assessments to summative assessments to formative assessments. My biggest thing is, let's not just have curriculum developed to help students learn for school, but let them learn for life. Okay, so, and I think I'll stop here. Thank you, Suman.
So, we have a few minutes, so
yeah,
we can take a few minutes. So any question, anyone has any questions or comments on it? And we will share the PowerPoint later with all the participants.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you know that I always need more time, so that's okay. Go ahead, ask me questions, please. And I believe you will share. I know
we have our next facilitator.
Okay, good.
But we will take 1 or 2 questions if anyone
sure.
has any.
Feel free to shoot some questions. Yeah, thank you for the comment, Marcial. Yes, it is about practical. People are like, ministries are like, oh, United Nations goals, and we got to do the United Nations goals. For whatever reasons, maybe you get, funding is more competitive, and if you bring United Nations, but the challenge is they don't know how to connect poverty to a mathematics classroom in 4th grade. Right? So how do you bring that together? Or peace and justice, goal number 16. How do you bring that into a classroom? And I see somebody is a director for indigenous people. And, this now peace and justice. You can actually bring systemic racism, understanding systemic racism into the classroom. I can use mathematics and teach them Venn diagram and say, this Venn diagram is for systemic racism. This is for diversity, equity, and inclusion. Believe it or not, many people think they are the same. They're not the same. Systemic racism is not necessarily the same. They have overlap, they don't, but having students debate that with a simple Venn diagram, you also teach some math tool, like Venn diagram, like two circles intersecting, but then you ask them to, the paper, I will send it to you. It's called Stream Across the Americas. Stream is science, technology, reading, and it's how I integrated the concept of stream into all these countries. And Jamaica has already adopted it. If you go to Jamaica's ministry, you will see stream on the top of their list. And Suriname is adopting it, and Suriname is using iStream. They put the I in front of it for innovations. So it's very interesting how these countries take on and then make it much more appropriate for their country. So let's see what else you have questions on. I can find my paper and I can either send it to you, Suman, or
you can send me the paper and I'll share with them, Padhu.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. Any other questions? I know you have a speaker already up, but feel free to, as I said, get in touch if you have any questions. I'm just going to put once again my email. If you have WhatsApp, I know some of you connected. Feel free to do that also. I'm just putting it again on the chat. Anything else?
No, thank you so much.
I see Pankaj also.
And Padhu, it's always a pleasure having you in any of our groups. Hey, now this is a new word. So if you turn your camera on, we can take a group picture with him.
Oh, let's take a group picture.
Goodbye to him.
Yes.
So I know some places, some people might have a bandwidth issue because that's why I don't force the camera on to everyone. Because it has happened many times to us in the classrooms. And Padhu will share these pictures.
If your time still permits, I have a question for.
Yeah, sure. Let's take this last question. Okay.
Yeah.
Hello, namaste, Professor Padhu. It's always very refreshing and insightful, your session as always. I just have a quick question. As you said, we train the dogs and we don't train teachers. You meant we educate the teachers, right? We train the dogs. Yeah. So how do you differentiate between training and educating? We interchangeably use these terms.
Exactly.
And we kind of take it synonyms to each other. So would you like to shed more light on that?
Oh, fantastic question. The reason I say that is when somebody comes and presents to me as I am the trainer, was training the trainers, so it's when they say training the trainers, then I give them a little more respect because they are considering them to be a trainer and they are considering the person that they are working with to become a trainer. Then it's okay. They are doing them as a level playing field. But when they come and say like, I train teachers, that's something that I don't take very lightly. So, and the reason is because of by saying I train teachers, they're already putting a status symbol. But when they say I'm training the trainers expert or something, or, work with them, then they're trying to work towards building more trainers, building capacity. So, and the biggest change I would say there is, I'll take it from a student's perspective. We tend to think teachers also like students, like they are consumers, right? So consumers of education, like I am giving you something, you're buying a service from me, right? I'm not selling a product here, okay? I want the first thing for people that are consider themselves to be trainers to think like you're not going to sell a product. You're actually sharing your knowledge. That's what you're doing. So first important thing is students and teachers are not necessarily consumers of education. Make them producers of information. What that means is they are in the classroom, even though you are going to go teach something, they are co-teaching with you. So it has to be, they are producers of information. Even more important, they are peer reviewers. They need to be able to evaluate each other. So I would say the big difference in training is almost like you are sitting in front of me and I'm just watching you, or I'm just writing on the board and showing my rear. That's training. If you're really educating and working with them, then you are actually going through the paradigm shift of, they are consumers to they are producers of information. I think if you can really do that, then you've really achieved the target of the second thing that you're thinking about. So I hope that was helpful, sir.
Beautiful. Well, if I may, this reminds very much our Eastern philosophy, where the teachers are called Kalyan Mitra. So it's a peer learning, and I think it's a beautiful concept. So you
The
don't
one
really
last thing I
train,
want
you
to finish, I
educate.
didn't talk
Thank
about
you.
it, and maybe Jonathan can take on this, is the importance of failure. Most of the, I come from India originally. I know developing countries, we are not like, oh my God, we failed. You go to the other side. You passed, you go to this side, that segregation. Like, that's why I like a lot, the culture in the United States allows you to, yes, there is kindergarten graduation and they pat, everybody gets pat. We tend to celebrate success too much. We need to start to celebrate failure, and that understanding what failure means. It's not like failing a math exam or a science exam. It's the process. Is the process on the teachers? Is the process on the directors or the lesson plan? It could be a lot of things. So I think that understanding that failure concept and how failure can lead to success is a very important. I believe the next speaker will also touch on that also. So, failure. So definitely there's going to be failure challenges, but turning that into opportunities is very, very important. So.
Thank you, Padu. I have to cut you off here. And then,
Yeah, sure.
every time we did a STEM program, Padu and we always used to start with, hey, it's okay to fail. So if you are not allowing yourself to fail, you're not going to learn, So that was always a message. So thank you, Padu, with that. My round of applause. So I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
I'm going to switch to a good friend of ours here, Jonathan. So many of you have met Jonathan last time. And so Padu, you are welcome to stay as long as you want to stay.
I'll stay for a few minutes and then I have to go to the next meeting. Yeah.
So I know that Jonathan and I were texting last night until ungodly hours because he was in the school board meeting. And it is my privilege to introduce him, and you have his CV. And his expertise is in context of school safety reform. So we all know that schools are safe haven for our kids. That's how we at least want to assume. We think every parents think the schools are safe haven for our kids. That's why we send them for 6, 8, 10 hours. And there are fears of unknowns at this context when kids are not going to school. Fears of unknowns are whether to put mask, whether not to put mask, vaccinations, and how about the younger kids who are not getting vaccinated, sanitation issues, cafeteria, are we going to have the same way the foods are going to be served? How crowded the schools are going to be? What kind of social hours or social activities or sports are going to be there? Are they going to have a different protocols? And I'm going to have Jonathan touch base lots of those things because policymakers, decision makers are struggling right now around the world. And Jonathan is one of the decision makers for his school districts, which is, I don't know more in context he can tell you, but from what I have been following different schools in US, I think that was one of the very few school districts which already experimented opening school last year, end of last year, go hybrid. So Jonathan, all is yours. You take it from here. I made you a co-host, so if you have something to share on the screen, you should be able to share it.
Thank you very much, Suman. It's an honor to be here again. Thank you to those who've been in this session before or an iteration of it. It's good to see you again, and welcome to new faces as well from across the globe. It's always refreshing to come in and be inspired by the prior speaker. So I cannot wait to go to our own administration and talk about having producers of information. In this day and age of disinformation, especially, and being on the front lines of that in public meetings, making decisions for our communities, which is more about compromise and consensus during a time that there's a hardening of partisan politics and anti-science and incivility. It's inspiring to hear about what we can do to move forward. It's not about simply being depressed about maybe some of the hardships that we have. So I'm happy to be with you together in friendship and with you as colleagues as well, so that we can learn from each other. I'm going to have a brief overview that I'll present. And much of that will be literally more global overview of what we're doing post-pandemic. But that's to get, your brains are probably going a lot faster than mine already. This is my first meeting of the day, first coffee. However, this is meant to be facilitated And I look forward to listening and learning from you as much as you from one another. So raise a hand at any time, test me and see if I'm good at multitasking, seeing a raised hand. If I don't, just break in, or Suman, you'll tell me that I'm missing somebody. But the goal is we'll go about 30 to 40 minutes with a bit more of a guided PowerPoint, but we can digress at any moment. And then the last 20 minutes or 15 minutes, we can wrap up. Again, we'll just build on that with the more freestyle type of conversation. So if everyone's okay with that, I'll move forward with testing my multitasking with a PowerPoint. Always the dangerous on a high wire screen sharing exercise here. Okay.
We talked about ICT challenges earlier.
Here we go, share screen. Okay, can everyone see that?
You are good. You are good, John. You want to make it full screen or however you want it?
Yeah. You know what, let me hit play, that would help. Okay. There we go, our official start. I just move the chat here. Okay, well, thank you once again. I'm just trying to actually get, I'm sorry, I have to move this chat. It's blocking our screen. So I want to make sure I have this interaction with you all. Sorry. There's something different about Zoom here with this chat. I'm sorry. Let me move this over. Okay, friends. Well, here's the overview. And I find best practices always great to talk about, but also we're here to speak out promising practices or just ideas. You know, nothing becomes best until we start it with a preliminary test. So here's some of the categories to keep in mind as we go through this section that we'll return to at the end and focus on for the last 20 minutes in the Q&A. So we don't have to be focused specifically on this, but it seems that these are good. This is a good way for us to group maybe some of the issues and challenges that we're all dealing with, from the health and safety protocols, challenges with virtual education and perhaps hybrid with that you may be having, parent engagement, community engagement. More importantly, what about retention and what we can do to reduce dropouts or really identify those who may no longer be in our school systems, but that we're able to re-enter. And then there, of course, what's probably on the top of everyone's mind, utilizing data for decision-making, something which seems to be a moving target at times, but I think it might've been March when we last met. I do feel that we have been able to evolve, whether we like it or not, with some of the data that we've been able to attain and process. Okay, the new normal. Maybe this looks familiar to some of your schools. Here in North Penn, where I'm a director, we are dealing with my introduction. We are, of course, at North Penn dealing with some of the same issues. Try to see maybe in the chat, could people maybe type if you're dealing with masking or no masking? If you just type mask or no mask, I'd like to see maybe a brief poll as to where you might be. As a community, we literally had the police called in 2 nights ago to deal with some of the anti-mask versus masking requirements, mandates, or recommendations in our school district. I'm not sure how many of you attending this today are seeing that in your communities. That's something we could touch upon later, but really we're going to instead discuss for this purpose maybe more global issues and common issues you may be dealing with. And I can see we've got some virtual. So that's where we'll definitely focus some questions and answers, and we can share some of those practices. Some of you have masking as well. And here at North Penn, we've really gone along the continuum where last July 29th, we went to full virtual. And in September, when we begin school, early September, we actually end up bringing back a very small cohort, and those were some of our students most in need, and working on masking students that we have with IEPs, those who may be on the spectrum or other severe needs in which they also have care workers. Those are students we brought back first in September through October. And we could talk about this later as well. Suman hinted at this. By October through December, we would bring back more and more staff and students, depending on spacing and what we're seeing with the data and the regulations, which led to, by February of 2020, we were able to bring back February of 2021. We had a plan we had announced to the community in January. In mid-February, we brought back any students who wanted to return to any level. In October, actually, I'm sorry, it was November. We had an election. End of November, we brought back all elementary students because parents and families who wanted that option were able to elect to take that and come back to school. So, we extended that to the secondary level, middle school and high school, which for us is 9th through 12th grade, in February. So families could choose to go either hybrid, which was 3 days on campus in-person learning with 2 days of virtual, or they could be in school 5 days a week or all virtual. We were very fortunate to be able to do that because of an investment in technology to have that hybrid. And we can talk about that if people have questions or any of the challenges or some of the solutions we had moving forward with technology and all virtual. Going forward this year, we are actually, as a community, it's 2 options now, and that's going to be either 100% virtual, which is a different model because we'll be assigning teachers to synchronous learning. Before was a blend of synchronous and asynchronous. This year we'll have all teachers assigned to just virtual students with virtual teachers. And then the choice for families is 5-day in person. So you could see we have fewer options. There is no hybrid option, so to speak, at this time. So that's just an overview of where we're at. I was wondering with some of you in the chat, if you could list how many students you have in your school district, just so I have an understanding of scope and we could see with each other maybe the size of the systems that we're dealing with. So at 13,000 in Pennsylvania, that's large. In the States, you can go to places like Texas or California, and we have school districts with 30,000, 40,000 students. But for Pennsylvania, we're considered one of the movers in the area. I don't see there in chat if anyone wants to put the size of your school system. One of the things that we were able to do here as we see this introduction, we did provide, we're now up to 1.7 million free meals distributed since the shutdown in March. So we shut down March 13th. A week later, we began distributing free meals. So part of that is subsidized by the federal government. We were fortunate with our some of the funds that we had saved over the years that we also subsidize that. And those are free meals for any students or families and drive ups to many of the schools and strategic locations that we have. So that's been a very successful program, which we expect to reach 2 million meals served in about another week. And if anyone has questions about that, we can certainly discuss those questions. I see someone from Radnor, and that I believe Radnor might be Lower Merion. If you're from Radnor, and that's one of the school districts we benchmark ourselves against, about the same size. And I see some other questions there. So this just shows how far we've come, which is very important for us. Let's take a deep breath, realize these are the buckets, at least as a district, how we look at things strategically, and then that guides what our goals and what we're going to evaluate as we move forward. Operational, instructional, Then we've got this rapid testing, that's our COVID category, but realizing all the changes and challenges that our staff and our community have had to deal with. When you see some of these issues in the middle, instructional, maybe that's what we can talk about during Q&A or any questions. With the virtual, we have Canvas as one of the, I'm not sure if anyone's using something like this. Canvas is one of the virtual classroom tools that really was popular in higher education. It was a major burden and shift for our staff to learn, our faculty to move to this learning environment. But that way we have a consistent model and platform which students and families are able to access and attain. It really helped advance our virtual learning platforms and what we were able to do with students during the shutdown, especially virtually. Block scheduling was important as we shifted towards virtual. That still has an impact to this day. We had always meant to shift the block scheduling. Going virtual meant that all of a sudden we could. And what that meant is someone like my daughter in 9th grade could take all of her math courses in the first part of the year and did not have that session in the second part. So block scheduling really chunked it out for more consistency. I'm not an educator, a trained educator like many of you on this meeting. However, block scheduling seems to be something that some of the community really like, others do not. And we're learning now whether is that due to just change, or is there something we need to evaluate and adjust better as educators? And Star 360 is another tool as well that we used. As far as we can learn about vaccinations and clinics, our community, we were able to use our facilities and public-private partnerships that for us, our federal and state, especially in the early part of the year, they're really having difficulty getting needles in the arms. So we opened up our schools, we had plans in place already, and we've been able to vaccinate over 40,000 community members, many of them students, and to give them priority, which has helped us. Our staff now are at a 90.1% vaccination rate, and that made a significant difference as well. So just providing context to maybe help with key questions you might have as we move forward. So these are quick takeaways. And many of you have probably dealt with already, but if this gets some ideas for us to talk about, we had procurement of safety issues, items, which was a major problem early in COVID, not so much now, but that some of us still deal with certain supply chain issues. Social emotional learning really shifted to well-being. We've placed a lot of resources into virtual, therapy, telemedicine, outreach, and also identifying students down to the classroom level and families who may need more help. Equity check-ins, so to speak. Equity and social justice has been significant. When we met before, some of you might remember, we had just voted an equity policy, one of the first in Pennsylvania, that overarches everything that we do. So now we don't just speak about equity and social justice issues, but we're able to have accountability and to measure that as we move forward as a school board, as an elected school board member, providing oversight. It's been interesting. I'm not sure if anywhere else others are facing this issue, but in America, diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is embraced by many, it's embraced by corporate America, the military, the government, but on the front lines of local school boards, it's been conflated really with disinformation, and that there are many people who are being confused now with diversity, equity, and inclusion being something that might be taking away from maybe certain individuals, white anxiety. There are many fears about what might be happening in classrooms. So we have to address that as well during this pandemic era. There's collective community trauma, which is part of probably adding to anxieties and fears and political partisanship and division that we're still dealing with. And though we may someday have one of these meetings that is purely post-pandemic, for many, many years, there are going to be those left behind. And that's why we're dedicated to making sure as a community we move forward together, and why equity is so important. Of course, there's the facilities and operations. I chair that committee, and I'm happy to answer any discussions you have, answer any questions you might have. But some ideas to think about, maybe that you're still struggling with, or you've come up with innovative solutions as you return from virtual to maybe a full setting. the physical plant itself, the protocols of what we're doing with our heating and ventilation, air conditioning systems. Staffing is a major issue here in the States and in our part of Pennsylvania, just outside of Philadelphia. It's very difficult to get substitute teachers. And we see that there's a slowing in the pipeline of teachers that are applying for jobs. And there's the reality and the requirements of standards, many of them conflicting, some of them which you might have a problem with your federal, local, or state. Or to be quite honest, you might have more consistency because your government is working hand in glove more closely. I'd love to hear about that because that is not what happens here in the States, though it has changed a lot since January and a new presidential administration. So this is an opportunity with that flyover, and thank you for sitting through that monologue. I hope that gets some ideas. How well was our system really working for our most vulnerable students before the pandemic? I find it interesting, and at times, it's disheartening when we realize how difficult it is. The challenges that our students had before are only magnified now. And here are some ways, right? We had students whose basic needs weren't being met. We had mental health issues, at least in the States, that were not being properly invested in proactive programs. We had problems before the pandemic with not enough facilities being available for students in social emotional crisis. And that has only increased through the pandemic. So we're trying to fix our plane while we fly it, right? Not a plane that was perfect before the pandemic. But now we're also trying to look at those students who are school avoidant, truant, or have school anxiety, which has only increased. There's some students who've actually done well because of the shift to virtual. We have to recognize some of the positives and learn from why that has happened, while also recognizing those students and families who are falling off the radar. Those are the ones that concern me the most as a local representative for the school district. And what can be done? What can we innovate to ensure that, as I mentioned before, that we retain those students, identify them, or find those who have already left our system and try to get them to re-enter it. And we can discuss that more in the section ahead. And we have students with proficiency issues. This is where equity is really important as well, and our ability to evaluate. And of course, students with disabilities, which we began discussing this in the earlier sections. Some of you, I'm really interested to learn from some of your experiences. Do you have school board meetings? Are they monthly, weekly? What is the type of interactions and responsiveness of your school system to what your community needs or what they want to understand more about? So these are just some questions that we don't need to answer in particular, one at a time, but wondering now with that overview, any insights, questions that you might have that we can begin to drill down? And here's some questions you don't exactly have to answer, but might be of interest to you. Anyone want to raise a hand, or you could just speak up?
John, I can break the question. I can start the question, and I'm sure my colleagues will build on it. So I'm really interested to learn that, I know it's been very challenging for anyone who is associated with school or any such institutions, that data are changing. Am I right? Data is changing. It's going up again, and there is some different variant and whatnot. And now as schools are in the process of opening in US, where like Florida already opened up, Pennsylvania is opening up, Virginia opening up. What kind of data are you guys really looking at? Do you have like a district level data, or the state is providing, or some secondary sources? How are you using that data to make your decisions? So that's one question I have. And other one is the protocol that is changing in every neighborhood, every schools. How you, because you chair that committee, so how you guys using that data to decide what protocol going to be in your school?
Thank you. And I would have a fancy chart if we already had it developed. Honestly, that was our school board meeting Tuesday night. We had a work session because we were trying to the best description is to triangulate the disparate pieces of data and information that we have. And it's our duty as elected representatives to put that puzzle together with community input to decide where do we go next. And so to your first part of the question, we are fortunate to have a county board of health here. I'm in Montgomery County, which is the third largest in Pennsylvania. We have 850,000 people. And our board of health is able to break down countywide numbers. But more importantly, and this is something we discussed the other night, we want to see what our overall community, about 100,000 people, what are our COVID numbers looking like in North Penn? Because, you could drive nearly an hour away, and we don't want to make a decision based on an aggregate of the county, but what are the positivity rates for COVID in the North Penn community? And we're able to roughly drill down beyond that, even on certain schools. Now, of course, the high school represents everyone, but we're able to go to certain elementary schools or middle schools, and we can roughly estimate what the positivity rates are there because they're more community-based, right? 13 community schools, we can pull in certain areas and see what that positivity rate is. So because we're able to have that level of data, that informs, to your other part of the question, what's our decision-making matrix, the domains that we have to share with the community. At this threshold, we're going to do A. If it goes to the next threshold, we're going to do B. And so it's very important to communicate at what level does the community expect to wear masks? At what level will there not be masks? And then are you mandating it, or is it going to be optional? So for us, this is the overlay of that disparate information. It's gotten better since the Biden administration, but we still have the federal government, our Centers for Disease Control, saying in K through 12, indoors, everybody wear masks. But that's just a recommendation. So we have the community hearing that. We're board members who hear that. We then have our Board of Health, which goes a bit further and says, well, for Montgomery County, we're not requiring or mandating it, but we are going to give you a chart that says at this level of positivity rate, and over 2 weeks, if you have X number of infections, average of 2 weeks of COVID per 100,000, they take those two data points and say positivity rate and or what your infection rate per 100,000 is. We will then have moderate, substantial, it's 4 different levels that they break it down. And with that, that's where they guide. And once again, it's a recommendation, which says at the lowest level, masks are optional. At the next level, which is a 5% positivity rate through 19%, masks are mandated indoors. At the next level, when we get 20% to, I think, 49%, masking everywhere at secondary and elementary levels. And that's the key, which I'm sorry I forgot to mention. What we're all dealing with is there's no vaccines for our K through 6, our 12 years and under. And then there's the question of how much of your population is vaccinated in your secondary schools. So we break down our decision-making chart, or we're developing the chart that's going to have rules for the elementary level and masking rules and social distancing rules, perhaps for the secondary level. We'll have different standards. But it really takes a substantial rate of 50% or more, which I hope we don't get to, because our county has a vaccination rate of 71% and rising. But what we're hoping to give is that pragmatic approach for the community, because we do have a strong, what we feel is a vocal minority that does not like masks whatsoever. So we have to be very clear as to whether we're going to mandate masks, or at what level do we mandate that, so that they can make decisions whether their child should be in school or not. Maybe they want to go virtual or go to a private charter academy option. That's why we need to be very clear to the community. Or on the other hand, perhaps you have students and families who feel very uncomfortable going to school if everyone isn't wearing a mask. So that's really when I talk about consensus and compromise that comes out of a civil communication process. That's what we are trying as leaders to facilitate in the community. And that's where some of this data can really help. Any questions that I can provide? I know that seemed a bit nebulous of a description without a visual. Suman or anyone else, can I clarify further? Suman, is that a helpful description of some of the key data points that we're looking at as a community?
Yeah, I'm not sure if Phil has any question, but I have shared the resources that your school district has published about guidelines. I've shared that with the group. And
so one of the issues that I'm wondering if there's any feedback, for us, if I have to break it down, we want to see what the positivity rate is for COVID. Is it spreading in our community? Our schools have generally been safe because of social distancing and masking. So when we were in school 5 days a week last year, everyone had to wear a mask, staff, students included, and we had a 6-foot distancing rule. That's changed. In the States, we're now at 3 feet or less where feasible, which is a gray area I don't exactly like. But that applies maybe to some schools which your settings are just too small. We have one elementary school, which is complicated by a multi-year renovation project. We still haven't figured out how students are going to be able to have lunch in the cafeteria in a space that we can keep them 3 feet apart or more. And that's the time that students have their masks off. So we're dealing with those logistical issues on a granular level, but also on a district-wide level. So we have social distancing, which we're a bit softer on this year as more research has come out to inform that. We try to have a 3-foot distance where possible. One of the major changes that we're looking at, say at the elementary level, where I expect that North Penn will likely adopt that all elementary students, at least until we learn about vaccines and we see what happens probably in the new year, all elementary students will be masked. We have to discuss whether your teachers and staff will be masked for modeling, even if they're vaccinated, and what the science has to say. But one of the changes, which I think has been a good solution, is we have that 6-foot or more space in the front of the classroom so that a vaccinated teacher can take their mask off and teach. And that we hope to find is going to make a big difference for the students in the classroom. Does anyone else have maybe developments or solutions in your classrooms or school systems that you'd like to share with the group?
I think it will be really good to hear from people to see what direction they are going in the countries present here, like Romania, Philippines, and Nepal.
And feel free to type in the chat box too, and Suman will ask me any questions there. I see one hand raised. Ms. Suba. Oh, if you could unmute yourself. Is that possible, Suman?
Yeah, they can unmute. Yeah. Please go ahead, unmute, and
I believe it's bottom left of your screen when you roll over it.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Excellent.
Okay. So thank you very much for your notes, very inspiring and informative. I was typing, but then I had a chance to talk. In Nepal, the number of school districts vary a lot because in mountain districts, we have maybe in the case of 5 schools only. And in some districts, there are more than 300 and 400 schools, and which is very challenging for the system to manage and school administrators and schools as well. But currently, due to the increasing number of pandemic infections, schools are all closed. As you said, there are partial, students are coming partially. They are sitting in a 6 feet difference, sitting arrangements. In schools where there are more than 70, 80 students in a class, which is very, very challenging. So in that case, it might be very useful for us in our context. How is there any other model that all the students they don't miss their class, but run the class virtually or in face-to-face class simultaneously, or is there any good practices or model established there? I'm not aware of schools, number of schools or the students, number of students in USA, but in our context, it's really challenging to run a school in this situation.
And what do you mean is simultaneous with students in person, but also virtual? So that's a hybrid model? Is that?
Yes.
So we found that was a bit of we workshopped that, so to speak. We had to go hybrid, and it helped actually to bring people back. That's one of your challenges, I would imagine, with that number of students. It helps to have some virtual because that reduces the stress on your in-person spacing. So we actually benefited from families that decided to be virtual. So by offering that hybrid solution, which means, and this is really the burden on the teachers as well as your school system, because there's an investment in the technology to provide the service. And the federal government did help us out. And we used some federal subsidies to invest in cameras and television screens that could put each of the students at home virtually, like we are on this big TV screen, and a camera and the right microphone with the teacher in every classroom, so that those students at home could be part of the participation while a teacher was in the classroom, instructing students, hands-on, so to speak, in person. That was a good solution for a short amount of time to get us through a very difficult year in transition, which has got us to the next phase that we're in. But it took a lot for some teachers who absolutely embraced it. And then you had those who aren't as diligent with the technology. But the simple answer, or I guess the question would be, is technology a solution that your school systems is able to provide? And then if you can, then you have to all of a sudden find more hours to train your teachers. And so let's say you have a money tree and you have this technology and you implement a hybrid program. Think about what that means for downtime or additional instruction for your teachers to learn how to use the system, the learning curve, the parents and the students learning how to use it. So I'll stop there and see if that elicits any more questions or insights that you have for your system.
There is a comment also, and a few comments. So Jayantiji, I will just add some to what John said. In my school district, which is one of the largest school district in the country in US, has about 175,000 students. It's called Fairfax County, and they have 75,000 staff and 30 some high school. So we had tried the hybrid model last year. It did not succeed in every single school because the school sizes are very large, not just classroom size, but the school sizes. And so they gave an optional where many kids, so one of my kid is in high school, so he decided not to go to school because he didn't want to get infected, or he didn't want to bring anything here, so he decided to stay virtual. So eventually there were only 12 students in his class of 25 who went physically in the classroom. So that created enough space for the classroom to maintain that social distance. But the challenge was the teachers. Teachers opted out. They didn't want to go to the classroom because vaccine was not available at that time. So teachers were not vaccinated, so they decided to stay home. So in that case, the students were in the classroom, and teacher was teaching from home, and half the students are in the classroom, half are at home, and students were watching this teacher teaching on the screen, on the big screen in the classroom. But what it did was it brought some kind of innovation in the school districts, and they hired young college-going students to be a class, they call class monitor. So it created a new job because you could not have those 12 kids sitting in the classroom without someone monitoring them. So these second, third year college students, they came to the classroom as a class monitor, and their job was to co-facilitate the classroom with the teacher who was teaching from home or teaching from some other location. And that created lots of new job, and it worked. Actually, it worked. But now they're going to go full school because all the high school students are most likely, very high percentage are already vaccinated, and so they are opening up in 2 weeks. But like John said, like something had to be experimented. But we noticed that not the kids are really aware of the problems, and they were able to make a decision whether they want to go to school or they don't want to go to school. So that was very good to see that kids wanted to be a part of that decision-making process. And so I know it's a big challenge. School sizes are very large, classroom sizes are very large in Nepal, unlike here. So, so that's a big challenge. So I just wanted to share that how different type of innovation took place in the virtual environment.
And I also thank you, Suman, for sharing that. I see there's a great description in the chat and what it means about the digitization and to go into a hybrid or virtual model. That's a really good point you're highlighting. There were about 2 weeks where, and it was panic and anxiety for our teachers when we shifted systems to Canvas, which I mentioned before, because they had to learn this brand new system, upload all their lessons plans, get everything digitized. And those are the logistical issues and unintended consequences that are good to know before you shift to those models. I thought somebody had their hand up from the Philippines. If you'd like to ask a question, you can unmute yourself.
Yeah, I have a question.
Yes.
Yeah, what would you advise in countries that are still hesitant to go back to face-to-face schooling, especially when parents are not convinced that face-to-face class is not safe? So what are the conditions that need to be set up or the first step to go back to face-to-face?
That wonderful question. So I'd start big picture is from the first week of the pandemic, our county commissioner, who is a PhD, she's a medical doctor and is a public health expert. And I've taken this with me. It's Dr. Valar Kush. And she had mentioned that we need to provide as much information as possible about the school setting and about what is occurring, such as a dashboard for maybe what the infection rates are at each school. That's what we're able to provide at North Penn. Are you able to provide, if there is social distancing, how much, how often? And can you also provide, part of this is an awareness campaign, the importance of, say, masking, the hand washing, and the public health issues. But you can hear it's that type of information which has to occur on a consistent basis so that it gets right multimodal, really public relations campaign so that people begin to understand what the district is doing to protect their child, to protect the community. But ultimately, what Dr. Arkush said is that with that information, as much information as possible that's accurate, which we provide often, people can make their own personal, their individual risk assessment for themselves as your faculty or as families. And so if we can identify for your community, what is it that families are really concerned about specifically to make their personal risk assessment and say, okay, we understand what is being done. We understand that we've raised maybe awareness about COVID and how the district is addressing that. And perhaps you'll begin to slowly have those students, have those families return. I find that probably the toughest aspect is having those students return. And because if you're able to be clear on a dashboard or to share what your infection rates are within that school or within your district, right? It's like taking that first step on that tightrope, but knowing you're going to be safe. Until the community sees that students are back and that the infection is not spreading within your schools because of your protocols, then you'll have more students return. And that's why at North Penn, I mentioned that slow ramp up that we had. The community became more confident. Of course, vaccines helped, but the community saw that the transmission wasn't happening in the schools. On the other side of that coin, once families trust you, they'll also be aware of maybe when the numbers start to go sideways, and maybe they'll want to pull their students out because it hits a certain threshold that they're uncomfortable with. In our community, we talk about the 5% threshold, the positivity rate, that if that goes up over 5%, then we become more concerned. If it's less than 5, we're at a very low level of transmission. So, that can swing both ways, so to speak, that needle for families. They just need to trust the data that, it isn't static. It's there for them to make a personal decision with. Any other follow-up? I'm not sure if that's a helpful description.
No, that's very good. I don't know if Marisol has a further question, but I just wanted to recognize, I see like one of our participants, Bhavani. So we had a opportunity to work with him in this situation in Nepal, where he took the classroom to the TV station. So they did a partnership with local TV station, because people had a lack of digital access, digital device access, or broadband issues, everything. So he still is running classroom on with partnership with this TV station every day for a couple hours. Where the teachers are coming to the actual school and they're teaching, but there is no student in the classroom, and they can use the board and everything else, and they can attend the class from the TV. And we partnered with a couple other partners on the program with using radio stations, FM radios. And so the people are being very creative, where the classroom is still a very, it's not really a concept that has sinked in yet to send the children to the school yet, because the classroom size or the school infrastructure or the community spread rate or whatever that could be.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not going to stop. So I know you are on the flow. So
no, thank you. That's why I'm here. I first time I'm hearing of a program like that. That's it's so entrepreneurial, right? It's one thing that educators, they will find solutions. Put an obstacle up. It will develop that type of solution. So I love to hear that. And it brings up that other point of, we can make a decision as leaders, we can manage a situation, but it's the unintended consequences. So to the last question, we also need to share with the community, what are our cleaning protocols? That's something as chair of facilities and operations, we always have a status on, do we have enough cleaning supplies or not? Where might we be running low? Where do we have a surplus and we're ready? Have we procured enough masks? What are we doing for those granular issues that really matter to keep staff and our community and students safe? Was there another question? Or please share some of your practices. So we're at about 3 minutes to go here. And Suman, we had those 4 items from the beginning here. And I want to make sure if there are any other questions related to the truancy and outreach issue. We talked about decisions and using data. We've covered that. Any other topics, Suman, that you feel I could highlight as we close this out?
I think I'll let that I'll leave it to the participants. If they have any question, they should ask you. Yeah. So anyone before John goes? And
can I raise one question, please, sir?
Yes.
Please.
Yeah. So I'm Bhavani Podil from Nepal. Suman sir told me about the television programs in Nepal. There is a problem, big problem. In community schools, only just 15 to 20% students are there in the access. Remaining, generally we can say about 70 to 80% students are out of the access. Same as in the private schools, normally that we can say 60 to 70% at present, they are in the access, and remaining about 30% students are out of the access. It means in the countries of Nepal, there is a large number of students are not in the access of this sort of virtual online classes normally. For in this situation, what I'm just doing, same as the just Suman sir told about my practices, what I'm just doing from my side or from my college, just through television channel, just I'm running the classes. Normally for grade 10, 11, and 12. For them that I'm running the classes, just my teachers are going to the television station and they are taking, using the blackboard or whiteboard or whatever. Normally they are taking the classes in this way. But the big problem is that the most of the students are not in the access of network. That is the big problem. In this problem, then how can we address the students, those who are not in the access? This is the big problem, sir. Then how can we just address such students, or those students who are not in the access?
So have there been solutions, and with the number of students that I hear that could be in each system? Because I was thinking about the logistics of getting the paper materials to students who are taking TV classes. That's one aspect. And then for the access and have there been broadband solutions discussed as well as a way to deliver the same network material?
Infrastructure is a big issue, John. So Jonathan, infrastructure is a big issue. So you are absolutely right. We dealt with the same issue last year in US, especially in my school districts, where just the Bhavani's and others information, even though it's a US, where infrastructure is way better than many other countries, but we had a challenge when Fairfax County, which is the second or third highest median income in the entire country, had about 25-30% families where children could not attend virtual classes. There are multiple reasons. One, they might have only one laptop and have 3 kids. So now which one is, who is going to take the class from the laptop, right? And, and so those kind of challenges, they ran into it. So the school district was very much criticized publicly because they delayed the virtual education last year by 2.5 weeks. They took 2.5 weeks. They partnered with lots of the companies, I think HP and Dell, and they distributed, because here they have resources. So they at least were able to mobilize those resources, and they gave out free laptop for the school year to the children. But that took 2 to 3 weeks just to distribute it because the school district has 170,000 children. And when they distributed those 20 to 30% children, now then everyone had a laptop. Some people did not have a Wi-Fi, so they made an arrangement for the Wi-Fi. And the education was delayed by 3 weeks. So this is a very big challenge, no matter whether it's a developing country or developed country, but we are figuring out. Here they figured out to partner with the with the computer companies. In Nepal, you figured out how to partner with the TV stations. So I think that lots of innovation is taking place in education. That's the good part of it. You know, we were status quo. You go in the classroom, you teach, stand up in the board and teach, go home. That's been going on for generations. So I think this pandemic really pushed us to the edge where we had to be innovative. So I think lots of innovation is taking place in education. So I know that I will take one more question before we give a round of applause to Jonathan. So if there's any question or any comments to say health safety issues before I ask Ms. Sharma our next facilitator.
And if I might add, for the virtual especially, one of the considerations, which you may already, I'm sure, have made and you're focused on, but we made sure it's that outreach. So whether it's someone watching on network TV or that virtual on the other side of the screen, what's our quality assurance, whether it's educationally or social emotional learning? We have a survey that our building leaders, our school leaders, would call random samples once a month and check in with students and their families to just see how they were doing. And so a very simple survey script, but to make sure we were getting that type of human connection that, the virtual, for some of its benefits, clearly takes, robs us of. And we were able to at least have a bit of a baseline and understand what our community was going through based on that feedback. And at times, actually address problems that families might have been having, different stressors, or maybe just student issues. So I wanted to make sure that that's one of the virtual aspects that you want to make sure is in your, in your toolbox, so to speak. Any last questions?
Just to add that before we switch is that there are lots of studies, lots of things going on. Like we have a number of examples from Kenya, even the Pratham. It's a very large organization in India that works in education. They are educating almost 30 million children around the world who are from marginalized population. So they have come up with lots of innovative solutions, right? So distributing radios in a community. So now there's one radio for 10 households. So all the children are sitting around the radio, and in certain hours of the day, the teacher is teaching and they're listening to the radio and following the instructions, right? So now the question comes is how are you going to do assessment for those children? And so that's a big challenge. How are we going to do assessment to those children? So that's a whole different topic. We're not touching that today, but there are lots of innovation is taking place, and which is good for the long term, which is really good for long term, because I think we were kind of very, we took education for granted, the school and education. So this COVID has really pushed us to the edge where innovation is taking place. So I've started seeing things from a little different perspective now.
I find that, and speaking with teachers as we've returned, it's still very difficult, and with our building leaders, but we will find out looking back that we've jumped in headfirst into the 21st century. There's risks with that as well as rewards, but the changes that have been made in some of the adoptions of technology, the way we do things, Suman, is a very good point. We're getting away from some of the status quo in a way we never would have before. So thank you all for sharing your experience, having those questions. I wish we could meet for hours, but there are so many great topics in this agenda for this one-day event. It's an honor to be here. My email is in the chat. Please reach out at any time. Happy to share resources, and have a wonderful day. Good luck, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Jonathan. We'll be talking to you soon. So I will just switch to the next one. So we have a colleague of ours from India. She had just joined in, and I know this is the beauty of this kind of virtual meetings, that we are connected from a number of countries and different time zone, when like it's almost 9 p.m. in Philippines, 6:30 in India, and 9 a.m. in US. And so I will just bring a principle of Delhi public school system in India. So Miss Anisha Sharma, she's the principal of Delhi Public School in Siliguri in India. That's a Eastern India in state of West Bengal. And I have shared her bio with all of you. I'm not going to read it. That's kind of boring if I read the same thing. So you should, I will recommend you guys should follow each other in LinkedIn. I know Padu posts all the time. Jonathan is always very active in LinkedIn, and so is Ms. Sharma. So I think this just creates a good community in LinkedIn too. You know, this is not just you come to one time in class and go away. You guys thought that in April that all the training was done and I'm done. See, we brought you guys back. So we're going to bring you back in LinkedIn also to have this conversation, continue this conversation. So we have asked Ms. Sharma to join us today and talk about her leadership style in this pandemic era, and then how she has done, what kind of innovation took place in her school system, where she manages a very large size of school, has I think almost 5,000 students, plus I can imagine hundreds of teachers and other staff. So without further delay, Ms. Sharma, all is yours.
Good morning, those who are from USA, good evening from other countries. In India, it is good evening, so a very good evening, and thank you, Mr. Sumanji, for giving me this platform to talk to the people all over the world. It is my honor and privilege to be a part of this session. And yes, of course, I will start from the day when the pandemic started. Suddenly, lockdown was announced, and all the school leaders all over the India, how to lock down education. We cannot lock down health, we cannot lock down education. And during the time of crisis, how a leader should behave and how she or he can act. I'm going to share my experience, what we did during this pandemic. In India, still it is going on, especially in West Bengal, still we are very desperate to get our students back to our school. Students are equally eager to come back and to enjoy the physical mode classroom. They want to see their friend, they want to enjoy the cafeteria, they want to have a connection with their friends, with their teachers. When lockdown was announced, it was very difficult for all the schools, not only DPS. What next? So as a leader, I can only say that during the time of crisis, any kind of crisis, the leaders are forced to think and act differently. Number one, what they need to have is they need to focus on the new plan and the next step. What is going to be the next step? How we are going to continue with education, or wherever, in whichever field you are, without any loss, how the organization is going to go ahead. Number one is you need to remain calm and act as nothing has happened. So your team who is looking at you, they will get relaxed and they will have a confidence on the leader. If during when the plane is flying, the pilot need to, all the travelers, all the passengers, they look at the pilot and they have that faith. So in leadership, it is very, very important for a person to act in such a way that the team have a faith on the leader and the leader should act differently. So we started planning and focusing how we are going to go with education, and the very next day before the crisis take place, we need to come out with a solution. We came out with a solution that we started continuing the education through WhatsApp. That was the easiest way for any of the school to go ahead before they went with Zoom or any other platform, whether it is Microsoft Teams or Google Meet or Google Classroom, anything. We started with WhatsApp. And from that day, we started working, having a faith that we are going to make this online classes as normal as physical classes. And believe me, that we did it. We did it, and the online classes are going on as smooth as during the physical days. So what we need is to have calm, have a faith, and remain focused. We need to collaborate and we need to coordinate. Collaboration and coordination are the two keys through which the leader can pass through any or overcome through any crisis. We also did that. And in this, communication played very, very important role. I should say very instrumental the communication was. Communication, there are n number of platforms for communicating with your team, whether it is video call or audio call or Zoom meeting or anything, but communication should not stop. You need to have a faith in the team that yes, we are going to do it. Many of the teachers were not tech savvy or they were not tech friendly, but they were trained so fast before the parents could get panicked. We came into very smooth sailing, and that is what the role of a leader is. Leadership is not doing something extraordinary. Leadership is empowering others. So we empowered our team, and network was playing very, very important role. So network was very important. We were very calm, we were very focused. We started with a handful of team here, as sir said, that we cater more than 5,000 students. So I have a huge team of 1,000 people where I have 500 teaching staff. And with such teaching staff working without meeting, we were doing everything on online platform, thinking, rethinking, inventing, new ideas were coming out, and appreciating others' idea is very, very important in leadership. You cannot only go with your ideas, that your idea is wonderful and it is only going to be clicked. No, we need to appreciate, we need to have collaboration, we need to have a teamwork, and there is no I in team, as it is said. So no I, it was complete teamwork that we started doing everything, not only teaching. Now every competition, whether it is debate, whether it is science competition or art competition or debate competition or any activity, whether it is dance or special assemblies or quiz program, anything we are easily managing in online platform. Not only we, all the teachers, all the school leaders are doing that. So it is very important to show the parents and the students that we are going to do it, and we did it. That is that. And having how you behave, that is very important. You need to have concern for your team. So that concern, that empathy is very important. So many teachers, you know, they suffered from this COVID-19, and to stand by them, telling that we are there with you, giving them moral support, going and taking them to the hospital, going and meeting them in the hospital and showing your empathy towards them, your love. And the team needs to understand this, that the leader is with them, the management is with them. So this is very important. So many teachers were so serious for 1 month. Still we have teachers, those who are suffering from this, and they are not able to cope up after 3 months of this disease. So it is very, very important for a leader to show the empathy, love, and care is very important for the leader to have that, and to discover and implement the new ideas. You cannot sit in a corner and just relaxed thinking that online platform, the education is going on. This is the era of doing something new, innovation. Looking at parents are looking at you for the innovation. Innovative idea is important. Critical thinking is very, very important. So as a leader, we think every day that what next we are going to do, what others are not doing, that we need to do that. And it should not be a temporary moves. Your moves should be permanent, whether it is blended learning, whether it is physical learning, online learning, offline learning. Your parents, your team should have a faith that this school or this organization is going to do its best. That trust and that faith, creating that thing is very important. And unless and until you are a good listener, you cannot go ahead. So a good leader should have a quality of listening, understanding, inviting the ideas, appreciating the ideas, and implementing those ideas is very important. And believe me that we did it and we excelled in it. In complete, when the survey was done by CBSE in complete West Bengal, our school was ranked topped in online platform, the teaching, the way the teachers are teaching. So every day they are coming out with new ideas. Last session, it was very difficult for the teachers to cope up with from switching from physical mode to online mode. Now they are used to of it. So this year we have introduced lot many things to make the classroom very, very interesting. And we offered them a complete training. Besides the training from DPS Society, besides the training from CBSE, we also had training. At this time of crisis, inspiring them and talking to them is very important. They need to look at you as an influencer. So you need to influence them all the time. You need to inspire them all the time. You need to motivate all the time. So while motivating and inspiring, I kept in my mind that I was having a very positive approach towards my team. So if I didn't like their idea, first I used to appreciate their ideas, giving them my moral support, appreciating their few ideas, and telling them that, can we do this in this way? This would look better then. This will work better then. So giving them that kind of your attitude and behavior, how you behave with that is very important. Considering their leave was again very important. So I used to listen them carefully. Many members lost their relatives, friends and relatives. The students were depressed because they also lost their parents, their brother, sister, or friend or relative. So the stress, the students was going through stress, teachers were going through the stress, and me as a leader, all the time giving them personal call and giving them, my support. I'm so sorry. Sorry, I was in a webinar before this one. I spoke for 1 hour. So, you know, I'm literally very sorry. So your standing beside your team is very important, which we did, which I'm still doing. Managing their syllabus to complete on time is another challenge for us. So the teacher suffering, suppose a physics teacher is suffering, so other teachers were under pressure to complete the syllabus. During this time, handling the students when they were not getting the opportunity to come to school, when they were worried and the parents were worried how to complete their project and their practical was another issue, another concern. Handling so many challenges, what kept me going was my positive attitude. Number one, keeping myself fit. So keeping yourself fit is another very big challenge during this pandemic time, keeping yourself safe. So meditation played very important role. Practicing yoga plays very important role. You need to have me time. Once you have me time, next day when you come to office, you come with that energy and zeal and enthusiasm to do something new. So at this time, critical thinking is important, creativity is important, adopting novel ideas and walking with the time, learning technology as fast as you can. That was the biggest challenge for all the teachers around the world. And a big round of applause and appreciation for all the teachers. Literally, due to them, the education did not have a lockdown. I know many students, dropout students, and many places where the education could not reach. Many families suffered because, or still suffering because lack of device or Wi-Fi, or they do not have sufficient amount to go with 2 or 3 laptops in the same home. If there is a parent with 3 children, how they will manage with so many devices at the same time? It was very difficult. Students sitting at one end and making a connection with them. So that is again very challenging task, I should say, because in on screen, how can you show your emotion or your feelings that you care? So as a leader, I organized so many open houses with the students and the parents and made them comfortable and guided them time to time, supported them time to time, and talking to the students personally, providing them email, my personal email, so that they can send me mail and we can be in touch. And counselor also played very important role for the students, you know, those who were under depression or stress or anxiety, taking care of them, encouraging the students. For in the month of February, we got an opportunity to get our students back for 1 to 2 months, and ensuring the parents that their safety is our first concern was the toughest job, I should say. We received so many mails from the parents. They kept on sending the mails that my child is not going to appear for practical examination. The child's safety is our pride. So it was difficult to take care of the students' mental health, to take care of the teachers' health, to go on smoothly with the online classes, but I did it with the support of management, kind guidance of the management, keeping my mind very cool and calm. I behaved that this pandemic, I should not say, is a blessing in disguise. I acted in that way. Through that, my team got that confidence that they can do it, and they did it, and they are doing it. They are coming up every day with novel ideas to keep a track on the attendance of the students. So every day in and day out, we worked. Recently, we organized a science exhibition, virtual science exhibition. And you won't believe, at that time, our PA1 assessment was going on, periodic assessment 1 was going on. At the time, online classes were going on, and the preparation for science exhibition and the art exhibition was going on. So more than 800 students participated, and talking to the team, and after going from school, again a Zoom meeting with the team. It was literally difficult, but I feel a connection, strong connection with the Almighty that helped me very much, that helps me all the time. I have a strong faith that keeps me going. Second, self-care is important. And the trust of your team towards you, keeping that trust is again very important. Working day in and day out without looking at the time, forgetting about your personal life, catering so many students and giving them the best during this pandemic was very challenging. And with all the leadership traits which I have learned throughout my life, I have experience of 18 years as a school leader. So my positive approach, my positive attitude showing my faith on my team and trusting them and inviting their ideas. All this helped me a lot to overcome this challenge. And I behaved as if nothing has happened. Another, new normal. We are now very much habituated with online learning. Soon again, we will be getting our students back hoping, and it will be maybe a blended learning, or it may be complete physical learning. At that time, keeping and maintaining all the protocols of COVID-19. With that, we will go ahead with our positive approach, our positive attitude. Here, I would also say that the parents' faith on us is very important. And without parents' help, without the support of the team, without the support of the management, and believing yourself is very important. When you believe yourself that you can do it, half of your journey is done. So well begin is half done. It is always, I believe in that. And a start we gave without wasting a single day. Everything was going on routine, making routine. We have 140 sections. So again, making online, keeping all following the guidelines of CBSE on screen time is less than the physical. Keeping that in mind, again, making a new routine, and training of the teachers were going on and on and on. And we did it. We are doing our best. And I think in coming time also, we will be able to teach our students how to handle failure or how to face the challenges very calmly. So we will not only train our students to handle success, we will also train our students how to handle failure. So that is again very important. So with collaboration, with teamwork, with coordination, with positive attitude, taking care of your health with your positive note, or your encouragement, your listening ability, or your standing beside your team, all this helps a leader. So a leader should think differently and act with calm, with showing concern for everything. Will help you to take yourself to the next level. I think this is what I did during this pandemic, and coming out with so many competitions. Hope at the time of pandemic, we have given a panel discussion on this. So Kargil Divas also there was panel discussion. So very soon we are going to celebrate Independence Day on 15th. So again, having a plan for that. So every day something new we are doing, and we are making our students feel that there is no difference between physical and online platform. So connection is very important. Wherever you go, in whatever time you are, whether it is a time of crisis or normal, you need to have a connection that keeps you going. Your communication skills keeps you going. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Sharma. And I think I took some notes on empathy, listening, making connections, critical thinking, inviting other ideas, implementing those ideas, and staying calm. So I think at this point, I will leave it open for Q&A, because I think this is a very important topic where you have implemented, like you said, talked about having a science fair online, going to celebrate your Independence Day in a couple of days, and other celebration. So I'll leave it open to the participants to ask questions and share their experience, how they are demonstrating leadership in their country or their department to face these challenges. So let's open up for the Q&A or the discussion or the sharing stories. Anyone? I see a comment from some comments coming up. So Ms. Sharma, you can take the comments. So the comment by Ms. Maricel that Ms. Sharma emphasized on 4 C's that we talked about in the very first session: critical thinking, communication, collaboration, and communication. And other one is Maria Victor has shared the relational, not just functional dimension with self and others. In education management is asking to be given the attention it rightly deserves. And I have seen that increased number of communication, whether it's through email or through voicemail, it has really, really increased those communications from the schools to the parents and to the community since the pandemic. If we used to receive 1 email, now we're getting 3 or 4. So they're keeping people informed really well. And I think Jonathan also emphasized on that earlier. Any other comments or questions?
This 4 C's, sir, it is critical thinking, communication, collaboration, and coordination.
Yeah.
So communication is repeated in 4 C, that is coordination. Yeah. Critical thinking, communication, collaboration, and coordination. So that is important. And yes, you need to entertain each one. I recently had an open house with 12th class. We have nearly 20 sections in 12th, and I'm taking a session with 12th, asking them personally whether they're satisfied with the teacher's teaching, to update the status of the syllabus, and meeting the slow learners' parents and focusing on them, taking remedial classes for this kind of children. So giving attention to every bit of it is very important. It is very easy for a leader to have the power, but with power, great responsibilities comes. So at 9, I reached office and it's already 7. So without seeing the time, you need to work. You need to be 24/7 at their service. So this is what a leader should do. And without empathy, love, care, you cannot go ahead as a leader. Most of the times I have seen leaders, they do not listen and they are ready to answer. I'm a good listener. If you are a good leader, you need to listen, you need to understand, and accordingly you can act. Of course, you have to see that the teaching goes on and the students should not suffer. But at the same time, you need to have that concern for your staff as well.
I have a question, not especially to you, but my question is to anyone. So what have anyone has done for the children with who has a special need? You know, it could be some developmental issue, it could be some learning issue, it could be physical disabilities. You know, how we expect them, or what kind of experiment have you done, or what has worked rather than experiment for them who has a hard time sitting in front of the computer for more than 20 minutes, 15 minutes, you know. So anyone has any experience or anything that they can share in this group, because that was a big topic subject that came out in March, April training, and we had discussed that a little bit, and I know Philippines had raised that question. So anyone has any experience, I would love to hear that. Ms. Sharma, you or anyone else?
We have a special educator also. We have the counselors. So this kind of children are taken care by the special educator. And accordingly, they act, and the teaching is going on. And in past, we have few children with differently abled children pass out from DPS. So we do have a special educator.
Any other comments, questions? Anyone? You can unmute your microphone. I know there are lots of comments came up here in chat.
If I may share, this is Phil from the Philippines. In the beginning, when the DepEd initiated the DepEd TV, it's an educational TV show for all their learners across all grade levels, from kindergarten to senior high school, and even the alternative learning system. they started filming episodes, and we noticed that there were teachers using Filipino Sign Language to address children who have hearing disabilities, hearing impairment. And in the YouTube version, they can also have option to have closed captions. So we thought that maybe supporting the DepEd in this initiative, since not all teachers who are part of the broadcast team can do sign language for children who have hearing impairment, we thought that it would be nice to make sure that all the a bunch of episodes can be sponsored, so that FSL and closed captions can be included in the episodes. And then that way, since the DepEd has already partnered with local TV channels across the Philippines, they have already partnered with different organizations who have YouTube channels, YouTube videos, and uploads these episodes online. It was a good initiative for more teachers, involving also the associations here for the deaf. And we got more episodes with FSLs and closed captions. And now what we're trying to do is support also the DepEd. It's an initiative of the ICPS division to convert, I don't know what's the right word for it, but to convert these episodes also for the blind learners who are blind, so that they can have the episodes aired on the radio, or still play on the maybe over YouTube, but with translation fitting for their mother tongue also. So that there's a lot of things going on with this initiative, but we are the DepEd is very keen on making sure that the children with disabilities, their learning continues despite the classroom closure. So I'd like to really commend the DepEd on that. And if you have other ideas also, I am sure we can learn from each other about things like this. Thank you.
That's a very, very, very good point, and I do know that, my daughter is trying to be a teacher. So they were offered how to make this educational video class. And that was optional for any teacher if they wanted to take those classes. They were offered those classes. And those who took it, they became really creative, taking their education, making them like really very innovative YouTube video available for the children. So they could, because if those who couldn't attend the whole class, there was a digital issue, the digital device issue or something, they could always go back and refer to those YouTube videos.
I actually think that this is the way to go in the future, maybe. If hopefully classroom closures will not persist for long, but having other options, other assistive technology options, making education available in a radio-based method, in TV-based instruction. I think this is going to give a lot of access to many children who cannot go to school physically because of whatever disabilities they may have. So I hope this remains an option in the future post-pandemic, when we have already started, when we all come back to schools eventually.
I do see one comment by Maria Victor. Maria, do you want to say something on it, or she talked about the radio-based instructions.
You were asking what have been some of the responses, or what types of responses have been done. So I was just citing that in the case of learners in geographically challenged areas or geographically difficult areas in the country, there has been an effort to undertake various options. So depending on what is possible and what is practical, there are various forms, for example, of radio-based instruction that have evolved. There's the use of walkie-talkies, the use of, some schools have linked with commercial radio stations who are willing to share free time, some amount of time for lessons. In some cases, the schools would set up a what do you call this, a radio station, just a very small radio station, so that it can just reach the learners in their vicinity, something like that. We also have this other type where you have the megaphones. So you have these megaphones up in the poles, and then it's good maybe for 20 households or something like that. So innovations are innovations are happening, and it in a way is asking communities to really look at what the resources are, what is their situation, and then to see what is possible. So as you were saying, and as Ma'am Anisha was also saying, I think our other resource persons were also saying that the situation is really pushing us to be more creative, and at the same time to explore possibilities, essentially. And then how can we reach our learners, and then how do we ensure learning? So it's that creative work, I think, that at the level of management we need to be sensitive, so that we're able to support continuously, given all these innovations that are happening.
Yeah, I have just shared one of the articles on the radio, and radio has been a very old technology in education. It's been there for ages, and many studies are coming out now, especially in vulnerable populations, marginalized populations, especially the girls between 12 to 18 are getting married right away. They are getting them married and send them. Lots of marriage in that population has really increased the number worldwide. And the reason is the parents think that let them get married and go, so it's not their burden anymore. And it's very unfortunate. So there will be lots of dropout from school from those girls. And so it has shown, lots of study has shown the radio comes very handy, especially in that population, for girls to learn when they are at home, household. They're doing a household work, listening to the radio, listening to the educational program. And it has been proven over 30, 40 years that how effective those radio tools have been. So thank you for sharing that, Maria. And I've shared one of the articles that I had in my desktop. So any other comments or questions? I have one question to Ms. Sharma. Like, can you give us one specific example of how you worked with teachers, like, especially if the teacher had challenges teaching online? So what method did you take to them so that they are not frustrated? Because we have seen like lots of teachers are frustrated in teaching online because they also want to go back. Yeah.
I would say, as you know, that we are branded and we don't hire any teachers without, quality. So quality is very high of DPS, and they are working since more than a decade here. So everyone were experienced. We made tutorial videos for the teachers, and we shared that videos with the teacher. And every step we guided them how they are going to go online in Zoom, how they will operate Zoom, how they will allow the children, how they will mute. So everything was there in the video, and teachers watched the video, and our teachers from IT team, they trained them through Zoom room. So the training was done, and in that way they went on practicing. First they were not knowing how to make videos. Then later on they were asked how to make their videos, how to place the camera, and every step they were guided by our IT team. They started making videos and posting in the WhatsApp group before we decided the next way, then ERP and Zoom and everything. And in that way, step by step, they followed, they went on, and the IT team till 2 a.m., 3 a.m., they worked with the teacher. There was no time, you know. We used to keep our videos off, and anytime anybody giving call and they used to receive the call, they were guided, they were in such a way that you will see we have recordings for all the teaching, all the classes, in all the section, in all the subjects. So now you will not believe that they were trained by the IT department. So the IT department were very instrumental, and they are the backbone for us to, for the teachers to get the training and for DPS to go smoothly. So they played very important role during this pandemic.
I have one more question on the WhatsApp. So how you utilize WhatsApp? Can you give like a 1-minute overview on how you utilize WhatsApp in such a large group?
First, it was making very small video and sharing them in WhatsApp, and then later on, very soon we shifted to the Zoom room.
So I will take maybe one more question if anyone else have for Ms. Sharma. I know it's very late, like, you know, it's like 7:30 for you almost, and you may have some other things to do because you live and breathe in the school.
I can take more questions if there is.
Anyone has any question or comments? Okay. If not, then Ms. Sharma, you are free to stay or free to leave. It's up to you. And so I will.
The session will go for another 15 minutes, right, sir?
Yeah, we have few minutes. Yeah. So I will keep moving on to for further. So I just told you in the very beginning, this program was not possible if Marisol from Philippines and Sarah, she's not here. She's sick today, and she's in France right now, I believe, and she couldn't join. And without them, it wasn't possible. And Marisol herself is an educator. She's an education researcher. So Marisol, I will go to you and I will see if you want to say something, or maybe I should ask Phil. Maybe I'll go to Phil. What do you think first? You want to say a few things, and or we go to Phil, Marisol?
I think Phil can share something about the best practices in remote learning, especially within the context of, within the experience of teachers or parents, because we are currently completing a remote learning study, and it would be good if Phil could also share some of the highlights of that remote learning study about the Philippine experience. Phil, over to you.
Thank you, Marcel. Thank you, Saman. When the pandemic hit us,
Sorry, can you tell a little bit about you, because not everybody knows you.
Yes, actually, thank you for inviting me to this session. Originally, I'm here as an observer. I just want to see how the discussions are going to run, learn from the speakers, learn from the interaction, the best practices and the promising practices of the different regions. I'm one of the education research officers of All Children Reading Philippines team. Marcel is my partner. There's just 3 of us here in Manila. But we are partnering with the DepEd, providing technical support and whatever else that the DepEd needs with us to support them in terms of capacity building and research, evidence-based evidence building for their initiatives. So this is one of those activities that we are doing right now, the remote learning study. And everything that has been shared from Professor Padu in the beginning, Jonathan and Ms. Sharma, they all resonate with the experiences we've had in the Philippines. When the pandemic hit us, we were just closing up the last school year. And I guess it took a while before we can establish our footing again, starting the school year, the next school year, 6 months after the classroom closure, the school closure of the past school year. So we thought that maybe understanding where the families, the school system is coming from would help the DepEd move forward in creating or following through initiatives in supporting the learning continuity of our children. So the remote learning study is actually a longitudinal study. It's mixed methods, and there are 3 data collection periods for this. And there was one in the beginning of the school year, and then we had it in the middle, and then we just had the 3rd round of data collection this May until June. And much of what Mrs. Sharma said, as a school head, as a school principal, really were also evident in the data that we found. No? The objective of the study is to understand how reading instruction is taking place during the remote learning, and what aspects of school leadership and continuity of learning dimensions to support well-being and the learning progression. So among the challenges that were experienced or that were reported from the interviews we've had with school heads, teachers, and home learning partners, much of the challenges they experienced are related to materials. So in far-flung areas, in the geographically isolated areas, distributing the modules, retrieving the modules back from the learners was a challenge for the teacher, for the home learning partners, getting the modules on time, making sure that they are able to answer the modules with their children, and returning them back on time was a challenge. And then there's also communication between teachers and learners. It's pretty hard because the Philippines is not fully connected in terms of the internet, and there's still areas where we don't have cellular signal. So what Ms. Maria shared earlier about using the walkie-talkies, yes, it's very true, especially in the mountainous areas of the Philippines. And teachers have discovered this while observing the community, other members of the community, especially the interagency task force, when they're delivering goods or delivering relief to the people. So they thought that maybe it might be something that can aid in the communication. And then another challenge is readiness of home learning partners to support learning, and then student motivation, because children enjoy being in school. They enjoy being with peers. They enjoy learning from their teacher, engaging with other people in the school. So losing that opportunity sort of sacrificed also the motivation of the learners. So to address these challenges, there were several adaptations done across the different sectors, from the school level, the community, and then the homes. This was already mentioned by Ms. Sharma earlier, that school heads support teaching and learning by organizing faculty meetings, learning action cell sessions, reaching to parents, organizing a mechanism for teachers to reach parents, to communicate with parents by providing simple things as communication allowance. And there were also much of the meetings were reported, the faculty meetings were reported to be discussions of solutions to the issues faced by teachers in terms of monitoring and assessment. It was quite a challenge now to monitor the learning and the progress of the learners, considering that a big part of the Philippines opted to do the modular modality. So children are given the self-learning modules, and it is with the home learning partners that instruction is delivered. So it was a challenge both for the teachers, not knowing fully if the children are learning at home. It was a challenge for the parents, thinking that they might not be facilitating learning enough because they are not trained to do that. That parents can see children are improving in terms of reading, in terms of writing, but they're not fully sure if they're actually learning or it's just because the kids are growing older. So the school system provided a way to monitor the learners through the chat groups like in Facebook Messenger. Some are using WhatsApp. So they set up like a group chat for parents with the teachers on them. And then the teachers can provide instructions for daily activities. These are the everyday activities that this, for example, for Monday, these are the activities that you need to do with your child. And then the teacher will wait for the parents to submit the activities via WhatsApp or via Facebook Messenger. And then on the following day, on Tuesday, she'll send another set of instructions. And then the parents will, if they have questions, they can ask through the chat group, or they can submit the work of the learners through the chat groups. So they formed that kind of mechanism to address the issue of communication as well as student monitoring and assessment. From the end of the community, one thing that we really appreciated seeing in the results is that the community themselves mobilized the leaders, community members, so that teachers who cannot reach the students in far-flung areas, because it really costs a lot for the teachers to travel, considering the lockdowns and the mobility protocols. The community members, the community leaders themselves are the ones who volunteer. So the teachers can just set drop-off points where it's safe for them to leave the modules, and then community leaders will be the one to transfer them and distribute them across the area. And then there were also barangay leaders who volunteered to air the radio-based instructions in some provinces. So I was saying earlier that I would wake up early morning to radio-based instructions being broadcasted using the megaphones. And it's also happening in the areas where we conducted the studies too. And then for parents who have low literacy capacity, they set up some kind of adopt a neighbor mechanism wherein parents who have more education and can facilitate the learning using the module can support other parents in delivering the lessons. So the parents are also learning how to teach their children, but at the same time, these parents are able to learn, to improve their own literacy skills as well. And I think it's also a suggestion made by several teachers to get these parents enrolled in the alternative learning system just so they can improve their functional literacy skills, so that they can learn as a parent in their own, but also support their children's learning also. And then for the parents, they were really encouraged to communicate. In the past, parents will just be receiving report cards. No, they'll just bring their children to school, they'll pick their children up, they'll receive the report cards. Not many parents would actually be involved significantly in the schoolwork of their children, especially if they are working full-time. But now, parents found ways to strike a balance between their work and facilitating learning at home. So, and those who are not trained to teach, they are encouraged to ask questions, make clarificatory questions to the teachers, ask them how they can facilitate this. And the teachers are actually open 24/7. They answer questions of the parents, and hands down to all the teachers who are doing this, because I know it's not easy. So it's really been supportive from the end of the parents. Challenges continue to stay, challenges continue to remain, but the school, the community, and the families have found ways to work together to ease the impact of classroom closure and supporting learning continuity among the learners. But of course, it's still necessary to manage expectations, like prioritize on other than academic performance, prioritize the well-being of the children, the well-being of the parents, the well-being of the teachers. Focus on the basic literacy skills of the children so they can become more independent learners. Promote awareness of public health, and to promote hygiene, hygiene and sanitation, especially at the home level. And then pay attention to the morale of the school and the teachers, and of course the home learning partners as well, given that they experience a big chunk of the challenges here, being unprepared to do teaching for their young children. So that's about the remote learning. If you have questions, please feel free to unmute your mics.
There is one question by Ms. Subasi. We were chatting on the side. So the question is that it's for anyone, right? So the lessons that are scripted, and it is very difficult to demonstrate that teachers when they are conducting a virtual education. So I will add something to that, is that, when many places that we have been working with, and they said we went virtual, and they literally took the book and they scanned it, made a PDF copy of the book and made it available online. And that is not really a virtual education. So was the virtual education delivery model, like, teachers were not ever trained or educated about it, because we were never prepared for it, right? So how that thing got translated in India's model or the Nepal or Philippines, that how these lessons that were scripted, when did you made a switch, or how you converted that into a virtual education? I'm not sure if the book made a sense, but I did share one of the article in the World Bank in the group. But that's the question, that, are we teaching the same textbook? Are we changing a teaching modality and lesson plan, saying that, hey, same textbook is not going to work when we're teaching virtually? It's an open question to anyone if they want to share.
In the Philippines, if I may speak for the DepEd, what we have now is the most essential learning competencies, which is the guide for many of the teachers in developing the lesson. So for a while, we went away with the books. We went away with the books and instead develop learning materials that are aligned with the most essential learning competencies. And these are the learning competencies identified by the DepEd to be of critical importance when it comes to the learning process. So for some skills that are usually promoted, developed, taught in school, these are things that might have to be taken away for now and focus on more important skills or competencies. So the self-learning modules, which were designed by the DepEd, is very compact, only the essential competencies really. And then these essential competencies are translated into the self-learning modules. And schools, at the school district level, they were oriented on how to facilitate this. And there were also orientations led by the school districts. Some school heads took it upon themselves to provide the orientation for the parents. And then for the books, where there are enough books in different areas, they give the books to the learners as references. So the books are just supplementary materials, but the primary materials right now are the self-learning modules. And then when we translated, but this is mostly the ones I mentioned earlier, where materials are converted into interactive EPUBs. These are for literacy development of the young learners, and these are focused on the mother tongue based education, multilingual education. So these are primers originally developed for teachers, parents, and then there are activity sheets for the children. But for the interactive version, these are now made in such a way that the material will actually talk to the children on how they can learn letter sounds, how to write the letters. So these and it's the DepEd initiative. We just supported them by procuring the license to the software, but the rest of it is really a DepEd thing. So now we have these ebooks, and we are developing some more for the older levels.
Thank you. So, one thing came up today from WhatsApp to YouTube and everything. So I just wanted to share that we have seen some schools and some places have used Facebook Live in teaching classroom as well. That example has been there. I just shared an article that's from World Bank publication in the chat. They have several different countries they talk about. There are tons of publications now coming out, and and one of the things that you just touched about the native language, teaching in native language, because when we are expecting parents to help out at home, it's kind of it's a challenge in many places and many families. And one more thing is, basic thing is the health and safety. So I think it was very nice to hear from all of us, everyone, that that's been a top of the priority for everyone. And I've always said in every single education program that I have been involved that schools are closed, not the education. So, but the parents or we are still in the mindset of school education, we still think about the school building, So now we have to train ourselves to think beyond the school building when it comes to education. And I think that's a big challenge with ourselves. So I always tell people, hey, school buildings are closed, not the education. Education has continued. Education has never stopped, and that's been a consistent battle for all the educators, because many parents think that unless the children are in the school building, they are not learning anything. So I think that's the half of the battle for educators. It's not the children, it's the parents, and so I think we are making good progress in it. And I'm really glad to have this dialogue. We had a long day. I know it's almost 10 p.m. in Philippines. You have to go to work tomorrow. So I will turn to Marisol. So Marisol, do you have something? I would like you to, I would like to invite you to say a few words and wrap it up. You there?
Just opening my, okay. So, oh, am I muted? Okay. So I think it's, we are already at the point where we are about to close this fruitful learning session. 3.5 hours away, is that fast if you like what you're doing. And I admire your dedication to stay long to learn. So we had a rich discussion on improving learning outcomes at the school level post-pandemic. And we hope that you have fulfilled your learning objectives to reflect further from your learnings for the first leadership program, to develop your skills on using data-based decision-making, and to share lessons learned from the education challenges and also best practices in leading schools during the pandemic. So what then are the key takeaways from this webinar? So we have shared together our ideas, our insights, and experiences on various topics, including the database decision and design thinking for leading schools. And my key takeaway from Prof. Padu's sharing was the importance of education for all and the need for more female students in STEM program. And of course, the Singapore's education philosophy to teach less and learn more. We also had an interactive session on the challenges of ICT, which includes connectivity, of course, education for all, teacher content knowledge, student-centered engagement, integration, among others. We also learned about design thinking and tools. Teachers working collaboratively using lesson study, teachers thinking critically about pedagogical practices, understand to cater to multiple learning styles, also using the 5 whys of Sakichi Toyoda and the KWL. KWL is what you know, what do you want to know, and what did you learn? And other tools like SWOT analysis, importance of the SDGs. This has been covered also in the discussion. And the importance of integrated learning and the 5 E's plan. Elaborate, engage, explain, explore, and evaluate, including formative and summative assessments, computational thinking, data-driven decisions, and working in teams. The challenge now is how do we bring change? So this is an open-ended question for us. So, students are not consumers of education, but they are co-producers or peer reviewers. So we are not training teachers, we are hand-holding them, we are educating them. In the second session, we also learned from Mr. Jonathan Casa on best practices with challenges in leading schools during pandemic, on health and safety protocols, challenges with virtual education and hybrid model, engaging parents and community to reduce dropouts, and utilizing data for decision. And in particular, we heard from the best practices from the experience of North Penn School District with the implementation of different modalities like virtual, hybrid, or 5-day in-person to purely 5-day in-person. So we have learned from their operations, instructional strategies, and rapid testing or vaccines, including the participation or engagement of the so-called PPP or public-private partnership. We also learn how they handled common issues like on procurement of safety materials, supply chain issues, SEL or socio-emotional learning, equity and social justice, collective trauma, and facilities and operation. We learned from their experience on fixing the plane while they fly the plane. So how well was their system really work for the most vulnerable before the pandemic crisis, and how to meet the the needs of the students. And finally, the importance of expectations informed approach. That is, communication plus transparency data equals accountability. So, there were questions like, what is data? How is information defined? Are there conflicting community standards? This question should be answered to establish or build, it's built towards decision-making matrix or domain, and the importance of communicating with the community to distribute accurate and consistent information through the provision of data dashboard. Awareness raising and information should occur on consistent basis so that we can build the confidence and trust of the parents and the community as a whole. And finally, in session 3, we learned about leadership at crisis and the changing role of leaders in education. And Ms. Anita Sharma stressed the collaboration of forces. Again, collaboration, coordination, communication, and critical thinking. These are important elements in leading schools in crisis. Her key messages would also include the importance of showing the parents and students that schools are doing their best and that they are concerned about the struggles of the students and the parents during the pandemic. So everybody suffered from the COVID-19, including the teachers, and we need to show them that the school leadership is one with them in coping with the COVID-19. Solutions should be long-term, and that trust and faith should be established among the school leadership, the teachers, parents, and community. And of course, the importance of being a good listener and knowing how to invite ideas, to empathize, and to implement ideas. And school leaders need to be an influencer or a motivator. There is a need to have a human connection with the students, the need to have an open houses with parents and students. And of course, most importantly, to have the me time so that you will have the energy and zeal to do something new or explore novel ideas and adapting to technology as fast as you can. And I really feel inspired by the dedication of Ms. Anisha in making sure that education will not back down or will not lag down, and that students' safety is a priority. Ms. Anisha talked from the heart, and I can feel the love and the care and that keeps everyone going. And we hope you are equally inspired by her. And with the challenges and best practices from the Philippine Remote Learning Study of RTI and USAID, as shared by Phil, we hope to continue to keep up with the learning laws and to continue with education post-pandemic. So at this point, I would like to extend my warmest thank you to IDI, especially to Suman, for your amazing efforts for this very important webinar and for efficiently and effectively moderating this learning session. We have learned a lot. We also thank our speakers, Prof. Padu, Mr. Jonathan, and Ms. Anisha. We have learned a lot from you. And ultimately, I thank the participants for today's learning session for patiently staying with us, interactively, providing your inputs, your insights for more than 3 hours in order to acquire and or deepen your learning with the ultimate goal of improving learning outcomes in the post-pandemic. The challenge now is in our hands, and we hope that we continue to inspire each other and take care of each other amidst and beyond pandemic. So thank you very much. Maraming salamat and enjoy the rest of the evening.
Thank you, Marisol. So we are at the end now. I'm not going to take too much time. I know we have 1 more minute left. So can we all turn on the camera so we can take a group picture and stay connected? I have put lots of links and people have shared lots of links on the chat box. If you have not clicked, please click it and save it. There's one in the very beginning. Roxana from Romania had shared a link because she is in editorial board of one of the journal. And if you think that you want to contribute some article, please stay in touch with her. And if you have to contact someone, you can reach out to me anytime. You all have our emails and you know how to reach out to us. So here is the group picture time. I know some people have still not turned on the camera, but we will take it what we have. We still have your name. So we know who you were here. So thank you so much. And so I'm not going to take any further time from you and your family, and enjoy the rest of the evening in Philippines, Ghana, Romania, and Nepal, and USA. Hope we get connected again somewhere in some program. And with that, adios. Thank you. And good evening, good day, good night. Thank you so much. I'll stop the recording.